Hey everybody, Luke here. Fedora Friday number 5. Fedora Friday number 5. I'm really excited about today's episode. Um, wow, it kind of came down to the wire for me, right? So you guys kind of already know a little bit about the format, right? Essentially, I have you guys vote for the movie or the topic, right? The idea is that at some point we're going to run out of movies, right? I mean, I know that's kind of hard to imagine, but maybe, and maybe we still stay with movies, right? Maybe the idea is that there's so many movies that I don't consider hat movies that I really enjoy. We got my man Josh joining us. What's up, Josh? Josh in Alabama, how's it going? Hopefully all is well. Josh is one of our hatters that we have in our kind of our Good Luke's network. He's a regular. He got into this really. He's kind of like he's probably the newest hatter, right? Or kind of like he's just starting out, but he got his first customer recently. I'm really excited to hear about that from you, Josh, in terms of like how that went. What have you learned? How has that inspired you to kind of what your next project that you're hoping to do and work on, right? I'm excited by that because, well, one, I'm not a hatter, but I'm a hat lover, right? I'm a hat enthusiast. And, I just love watching you guys do your thing, right? All of you guys, not just the folks that come on this channel, but all the folks like the hatters that I come across on Fedora Lounge, on Facebook, on YouTube, what have you, all of, essentially all social media. And again, I don't know what I can't, what I was not in front of me, right? There's probably so many great hatters that I've never met and I never see because they're not on social media. And that's fine. I'm like, hopefully their business is doing that well. It's like I don't need social media, but it's all good. Hey Ian, how's it going, my friend? Ian, remember you're invited to be on screen. Don't worry and don't be shy. You know what I mean? It's Fedora Friday. It's not Hat Tuesday, but and I'll show photos. But it's up to you. Whatever your preferred format is. Josh here says, I hope to one day do a live stream of me building a hat. Yeah, I recommend it, Josh. To be honest, I really think that the live stream format is pretty powerful, right? It's not the end all and be all, right? I mean, I had a great conversation about this with my good friend Steve Heck. You guys all met Steve Heck from last week, right? He came on and talked about the real velour process. Right. So I went out with him on Wednesday. So this past Wednesday, me and Steve, and some of you might have seen photos that I posted or a photo. I don't think I posted photos. I just posted a photo. We only took a photo together at the very end. And, I was wearing this hat, this very same outfit. And we were over at a local beer garden and we had a really good talk about hats in general. Man, Steve, if you're watching this, I mentioned this already on the Fedora Lounge. You have a really great gift of like just knowing a lot of things. You know what I mean? And I feel like I get the same vibe from Steve that I get from Ian. Right? Ian joked about that on Tuesday, right? About like he is right. You both right have kind of encyclopedic knowledge, right? And he's doing this all extemporaneously, just like Ian did. Ian is there saying, I would love to see that, Josh. Yeah. I would be somebody that like I'd try to make time to make sure, right? Because well, one, you made time for my channel. The least I could do is try to go and support, and I try to do the same with Josh. I mean, sorry, with Paul's channel. And even the folks, right? Obviously, Kevin, and Johnny. These are folks that haven't appeared on our channel yet, but I'm hoping to bring them on there, and I want to kind of just support, even without any expectation that they'll come on. But I hope they do come on. So if you're watching this, Kevin, you're watching this, Johnny, Robert. I hope Robert Galt comes back here. I kind of like lost a little bit of communication with Robert And there could be a good reason. Robert is a busy man, and he's got other passions, and he's got obviously a lovely wife. So he probably is just not. He doesn't have the time to kind of invest, and that's okay. Like I said, we welcome anybody here, regardless of how often you come on here. And you know what I mean? You don't have to be a regular, right? Like Josh, Ian, Morgan. Morgan said, everybody saw Morgan, and she posted that she's kind of been away doing things. It sounds like she's got something really great happening in her life right now, and she has to make time for that. And I really want you guys to do that as well, really, right? So good looks should be secondary, right? If you have the time, right? Ian, we know that you're retired. You might have a little bit more free time, but you even mentioned it when you were on Tuesday that, you are actually busier now that you are retired than you were even while you were still working. And I feel like that makes me feel good, right? I hear that from somebody that's retired, and I'm like, because I really want to do the same thing, right? I'm not going to retire anytime soon. And I like that because I really do love my job, my day job. In many ways, I kind of feel like I'm retired now, to be honest. I just happen to be collecting a paycheck. So shout out to the good folks that employ me, and I really appreciate it because I feel like the company is very progressive, right? Everybody works from home, and they allow us that time that I otherwise would be spent traveling to and from an office, right? If you guys know the DC metro area, even if you don't know it, I'm sure you can trust me in that it's one of the worst areas for traffic, right? We're up there always with LA and all the other centers that I'm like, to be honest, I've only spent a little bit amount of time in LA, but I was there on the weekend, and it was it was the business district, right? So maybe that had something to do with it. I was there for a conference years and years back, and I was like, well, this is a ghost town. Where's all that LA traffic that I keep hearing about, but it's there. I'm sure it's there. But the DC metro area, holy cow, is it I think now, right, we're in the middle of a government shutdown, the federal government. And as you know, or you may not know, but I'll tell you that this area is kind of a hotbed for federal government workers, right? So those folks are, my heart goes out to the folks, those employees that essentially were furloughed or about to be furloughed and laid off, right? Besides the fact that we have federal government, employees, right, who don't count, right? You kind of go into government with the idea that you got a job more or less for life. So I understand that notion. They feel a little bit betrayed. So again, I don't want to get political. This is not the point of this channel, but at the same time, these are real people that are suffering, right? And probably a lot of them kind of voted for the same people, that kind of are responsible for the outage. So it's a little bit of ironic, right? But again, doesn't matter. My heart goes out to any of those folks. We've all been there, right? If you've been a professional for all your life, and if maybe you haven't, right? And God bless if you've never had to go through a layoff, if you've never had to go to a situation like this where you're like, wow, I did not see that coming, right? You show up to the office and you're like, well, what do you mean I got to go home, right? You don't, even if you never experienced that, you could imagine the situation that turmoil that creates, and the chain reaction that creates. So hopefully the situation gets resolved, but in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of folks, right? We're now, right? It's now October. We're now heading into the holiday season. It's a really tough time. It's never a good time to get laid off. But right now, when you're kind of like, oh man, I was planning to have a kick-ass Christmas, and well, before Christmas, a kick-ass Thanksgiving, and before Thanksgiving, a kick-ass Halloween, and those things are a little bit harder to imagine having a great time when you're dealing with the layoff, or an impending layoff, right? You just have to stress, right? It's like, is it going to happen today? Is it going to happen today? How about now? How about now? Right? So anyway, I'll be done with that because again, I like to focus on happier things. So yeah, right here we got Josh and Ian. Again, some of my core here. Paul already said that he cannot join us. We'll miss you, Paul. Hopefully you're doing some really big things over there. I know you are. I don't even have to guess. I know Paul's doing big things because he's just that kind of person. And I'm really blessed to have known you, Paul. So, cheers. And, I don't have an alcoholic drink because it's way too early here. But I do have my fizzy drink of the day. And not just that, we have a kick-ass movie, right? And again, nobody really needs to know, right? So like, if you haven't seen The Untouchables, I don't know where you've been at, right? Like, it's an iconic movie. I don't even know where to start with this movie, but I'm got to start somewhere. Because if you guys seen this format before, you guys already know. And if you're wondering, first of all, before I even get to the movie, if you're wondering what hat I'm wearing right now, this is. And you've probably seen the hat if you've been following my social media, because I've been kind of wearing this hat. I've essentially been wearing this hat out, right? So to speak. This is my Scott & Co. Hamburg, right? And if you guys see my social media, you've seen my what my research has uncovered. And I did that fairly quickly, right? So I didn't really have the hat. I think the same day I got this, and this is very similar to the process I always do, right? I go, and if a vintage hat comes my way, I will try to learn, right? One, who sold it to me? How did you get to it, right? Paul sold me this hat. He also sold me, well, these two beauties right here. And we'll talk about those in the future, but Paul's not here. I don't want to talk about my two PJ Murphy and Son fedoras, right? My Mets fedora and this one right here, which is, oh man, I really like both of these, to be honest, right? But Paul, we're gonna get you. Maybe I guess I already teased the fact that to Paul in my inner circle talks about potentially getting together on Tuesday. And again, if Paul's not available Tuesday, then I'll push it back to another day. Either maybe I'll create a dedicated hat chat episode, right? The same thing I did for Robert, where I created hat chat. And yeah, the hat with the X hat is it's art, right? And you don't even, I mean, you kind of like, if you've seen my social media posts, right? And again, I'm not trying to say that I'm an artist, but I am a lover of art, right? And that's kind of like, as I get older, right, I kind of never really appreciated art, but now, art, the traditional art, right? Like Salvador Dali happens to be one of my favorite artists. Shout out to Salvador Dali. Obviously not with us, but he lived up until fairly recently. I think in the late 80s, I believe he passed away. But yeah, Ian says I agree. Salvador Dali, and then obviously artists that create art with their hats, right? Again, we've talked about Brian. Without having Brian here to speak for himself, I get vibes of an artist from Brian. Brian Forbes, that is, the creator of the iceberg, right? The frost hat, the snowflake hat. That's what it is. The snowflake hat. You guys seen it here. I'll go grab it right now. But if you've been on my social media, you've kind of seen this snowflake hat, right? This is art. To me, this is art. Let me make sure I get Brian's. And this is just a beautiful, beautiful hat. I'm proud to have this as part of my collection. I do wear this outside. You know what I mean? Like, again, I haven't worn it as much as some of my other hats, right? I have to be in a certain mode to kind of pull this off, right? And feel like, hey, am I doing the hat justice? Because this is a hat that commands attention. Yeah, it's a great lid. I agree. It's very different, right? Without knowing, right, Brian's history, right? We talked about, let me put this hat away real quick. I'll be right back. Without knowing from Brian, right? And Brian's part of our like inner circle group. Yeah, exactly. Brian's part of our inner circle, but if I had, based on what I've learned up until this point from Robert Galt and some of the other things I've been hearing, right, I have to guess that Brian kind of learned his craft from a milliner, right? Robert made that distinction. Robert went into his first hat making class, was taught by a milliner. And he had a great story, man. Robert, man, you killed it with that story. Because for me, it goes to show you, like I said, people paying attention. I mean, I'm trying to pay attention, right? I have a kind of an ADHD, which I mentioned before. So my attention span can wane, right? And you see it in my speech, right? I'm very twitchy speech, because that's how my brain works. My brain is very like fast twitch. So, couple that from my New York background, and you get a very fast talking guy that also mumbles a lot, right? Because, well, my dad mumbled, right? We come from a long line of mumblers, right? It's kind of like the idea behind that is that, well, country folk, right, especially on the island of Puerto Rico, they were no strangers to sugarcane, right? And if you follow like the idea of moonshining, right, that we talked about, lawless sugarcane is a thing, right? So, right, what do moonshiners and people from the island have in common when you're dealing with sugarcane? They got teeth that are not exactly in the best shape because sugar doesn't do great things for your teeth. So with that comes a lot of that mumbling, right, that you start seeing in some of the country folk, right? The folks that are in that, you start getting that mumble mouth. And I have that in my family because, well, we come from a long line of people that, well, we didn't really look after our teeth as much as we should have, right? We probably couldn't afford dentists. A lot of our work was in the sugarcane fields where we're like, getting a little high in our own supply, and then our teeth suffered because of it. Josh says, I helped a milliner from East Europe as she had an issue with a brim break of a hat. That's great. Josh, that's fantastic, man. I love it. You see, this is what I feel. This is that kind of like the legacy that I think Robert, right? So when Robert kind of, if Robert ever finds his way outside of this hobby, he's already left a lasting legacy in that you've seen Robert in action, right? And I mentioned this when he came on. Robert has that heart of a teacher, right? Very similar to, like, I mentioned this to a lot of folks. Steve Heck, heart of a teacher. Paul, heart of a teacher. Ian, Josh, and Morgan, hearts of a teacher. And there's no coincidence as to why I feel like that. I could be projecting because I see those qualities in you guys. Right. And I love hanging out with you. And I think that there's a reason, right? Besides the fact that I'm projecting and I love teachers, right? Who doesn't love teachers, right? Like I said, we're all teachers. We're all been taught, right? Our parents are our first teachers. And it's just exciting to be learning, right? That's the one thing that, as long as your brain allows you to, and you have that motivation to continue learning, it doesn't matter if your physical body fails you, right? I had a great conversation with Steve on Wednesday when we went to the beer garden, and he was like, "Yeah, I have my body is not the same because of fencing," and I thought that was really interesting. I'm like, wow, fencing, that's an interesting sport, you know what I mean? And an interesting passion. And I guess I just didn't realize the toll that fencing takes on your body. But Steve educated me a little bit on that. And it just made Steve even that much cooler. Shout out to Steve Heck. Steve, I hopefully this is okay that I get to call you a friend, because I feel such, like I said, a certain kinship to you in your story. And you're just one of the many interesting folks that have found their way into my life, and I'm really blessed for it. So shout out to Steve. Hopefully, Steve, you'll be back. We've already talked a little bit about some of the things that you want to see. Steve had some really good feedback about this channel. I think Steve's giving me a lot more credit than you know what I mean, in terms of his feedback. But I'm going to try not to disappoint Steve. I'm going to try to kind of raise the quality of this channel. Some of you guys like, oh, well, the quality is just fine. And partly I think the quality is just fine. But I kind of really respect YouTube, right, and my fellow content creators, and feel free to reach out, right? So if you know a way, and I'm going to do this like I do a lot of things, very stepwise, right? I'm a big fan. If you already heard this a lot of times, right? Like at some point, if you've been watching this channel for as long as, let's say, Ian, as long as Paul, and soon like Josh is like, he kind of got into the fold a little bit later, but he probably already seen me enough times you guys already know a lot about what I like to refer to, and like my friends call Lukeisms, right? Right, the things that make Luke who he is, and I try to give you a little bit of me every single episode because, well, I feel like my journey is still being written. Right, all of our journeys are still being written. My hat journey is still being written. My career journey is being written, and of course, my life journey. Right. So as long as I'm above ground, I'm still gonna keep here and trying to go and develop and refine who I am. Right. So there may not be a whole lot of revolutions left in my life, but it doesn't mean that I'm not doing the evolution, right? Right, and who knows? Maybe there'll be more revolutions, right? In my life, I don't know I don't know what's gonna happen to me. It could happen tomorrow, right? Tomorrow I go out for my walk, like I did today. Beautiful day, by the way, here in the DC metro area. Went out for my walk. Got to interact with some people. As I try to do every day, right? So get out there and walk if you can, right? Go see the city. Maybe maybe you don't have to take as many steps as Ian and Paul did the other day, or on Friday, when they went out for their tour de force of Lock and Co and all the Layards and all those very Stetson, right? But go out there and enjoy some of that sunshine because it's good for you. I feel like it helps you reflect, right? I don't mean this to be a wellness channel, but wellness, right? You can't enjoy hats if you're not well, right? It's like remember the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You got to take care of those lower order needs before you start thinking about self-actualizing, right? Getting up that pyramid and enjoying your hats, right? And a part of that is taking care of your own personal health, right? Taking care of your own life and your own affairs, right? Taking care of your family, right? Your family is a big part of your base, your fundamentals, right? Like, I don't want to see you, like, if as much as I love you guys all, but if your family out there is needing you, right? I want you to take care of that first. I don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Right? I appreciate you guys prioritizing me, right? But that goes for all of you. I feel like I'm just telling you stuff that you already know, but that's what I do. That's one of those Lukeisms that I kept talking about. Anyway, I'm glad, Josh. I'm glad that you helped out this person, and like I said, you're paying it forward. So good on you for continuing that and being a teacher, even though you're relatively young in the craft. It goes to show you that how this can spiral out, and you're putting good stuff out into the universe. You're putting good hats out into the universe, right? And you're gonna get rewarded. I know you are. The universe has a way of rewarding that kind of like goodness, right? As part of the good in good Lukes, right? We put out positivity. It doesn't mean that we just ignore negative stuff, right? We don't ignore the negative. That's just silly. We go and we don't let it take us down, though, right? It's like, love will always conquer hate. I don't care. You may disagree, right? And just because I love a villain, it doesn't mean, right, a movie villain, right? Bull the Butcher, Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, right? Who else? Al Capone, right? The villain in this story, quote unquote villain, right? Right? Because villains are very complex individuals, right? But all those villains are born out of tragedy, right? Tragic circumstances. That's a tale as old as time, basically going at least as far back to the Greeks, and probably even well before the Greeks, right? The tragic figure, the tragic villain, they're just like the tragic hero, just flipped, right? And let me just stop with the pontificating here, because I feel like I could just keep doing this forever. Obviously I'm on my medication for my ADHD, and maybe it's causing me to be a little bit more verbose, but hopefully you guys indulge me. But anyway, I want to get back to this movie because that's what you guys came for. So the hat of the day is this Scott & Co. Hamburg. If you missed it, this is from the 1930s, as best as I can date this hat. And I feel like this is a great movie to kind of wear this Hamburg in. This is kind of a, man, I really love this hat. Paul, thank you so much. Shout out to Paul at PJ Murphy & Son for providing this hat, right? So, in addition to these two beauties that I will talk about in another episode, but, and then I'll also show you some photos of this if you guys haven't seen, but you can follow me on Facebook. So let me just go and put my banner up here. right? You guys, if you guys want to go and you want to like this the video, you want to subscribe to the channel, you can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and X. I don't post on X a whole lot, but you can find me, right? It's basically Good Luke's, one word, but instead of 2 O's, it's 2 zeros, right? It's like almost like a double barrel shotgun, right? Right. So the O, the 00, the OO, the ooh, or the ots. Anyway, let me go and share some photos. Like this is going to be a very photo heavy. And if you guys knows my format, right, I do a lot of photos. This movie obviously is chock full of hats, but I have a framework, right? And I'm going to go a little bit backwards this time because I usually end with ChatGPT, but because everybody knows this movie, and again, if you've not seen this movie and you don't like spoilers, stop the video now. Just stop it. You'll see it in syndication, right? You don't want me to ruin the movie for you. That's great. I can't believe you haven't seen this movie, but stop the video, watch the movie, and then maybe watch it maybe watch my video afterwards, or watch it a week later. I don't know, however you want to do it, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't need, I don't want to be have that on my conscience that I'm ruining the movie for you. Anyway, I want to go back to the slideshow, and again, let me see if I can go and zoom in a little bit here. I'll read off a little bit here because honestly, oh geez, all right, there. Honestly, like, some of this, and again, you guys know my process. I will go to ChatGPT, but already, if ChatGPT says something, you want to fact check it. ChatGPT gives you references. So if you can see here at the end of everything they do, they'll provide you a reference. So you got to go to the original source, right? If you're a researcher, already, go to the original source, right? Don't just trust Good Luke's. Don't just trust ChatGPT. Go out there and do your own research. Follow up on those links. And then later on, right? It's like, Luke, I followed up those links. That's bullshit. You know what I mean? And that's fine. Like, I want to be educated here. I don't want to be propagating ignorance. That's one of those Lukeisms, right? Luke does not want to propagate ignorance. I'm about the truth. And my opinion, because I happen to be an expert in my own opinion, right? So, anything I say, and if it's not factual and you're able to correct me, please do so. Because if you don't do it for yourself, do it for the other viewers, right? That they want to know the truth. So a little bit of the backstory. I asked ChatGPT who was responsible for the hats, right? Kind of the look. And I learned some really interesting things, right? So obviously the first item here, the costume designer, a lady called Marilyn Vance Straker, credited costume designer for the Untouchables. Wow, like you already know that the styling in this movie is impeccable, right? Again, as somebody that's not lived in the 30s, Prohibition era, in Chicago no less, you can tell already they nailed the look. They had a wardrobe consultant / researcher. I love it. I love that they got a researcher, right? You got somebody, right, that's applying the knowledge, right? That's Marilyn. But somebody has to be in charge of who's in charge of the fact that the knowledge is correct. It was this gentleman called Richard Bruno. He's credited as the wardrobe consultant and quoted in production write-ups about sourcing period pieces and archival material. So shout out to Richard Bruno, because I think you nailed it, man. Hopefully this gentleman's still alive. If not, then he deserves, regardless of his status, he deserves a lot of credit for what went into this movie. And tailoring, right? So Henry Stewart, a New York tailor, repeatedly cited as the tailor who made Robert De Niro's Capone suits. De Niro reportedly tracked down Capone's original tailors and used Stewart to reproduce them. That goes to show you what, like I said, regardless of how you feel about Robert De Niro, he's kind of like become this pariah, this kind of like symbol of kind of the left. Again, I'm not going to get political in here. Whatever you think about Robert De Niro, the man is a tremendous actor, right? Obviously a method actor through and through. And, and we had a great conversation with Steve, speaking about method acting, right? We had somebody like Quentin Tarantino who hated, like, he abhorred, first of all, he abhorred Kevin Costner, right? So if you don't know that, he really kind of blames Kevin Costner for a lot of what's wrong with cinema. Again, I like Kenneth Costner. I like baseball. Everybody knows Field of Dreams and all the iconic Kevin Costner baseball movies. But Tarantino happens to be somebody that that respects the villain, right? If you guys already know about Tarantino's characters, right? Maybe we'll do a Tarantino movie because he's a genius, right? That man's a genius. And he had some of these, like he had a run-in with a couple actors that that you probably know very well and that he's very disappointed in, right? Because they did not respect his process, right? So that's a kind of that push and pull. If you're a big fan of film, you probably already know this, but I do this for junior fans, right? Like I consider myself a junior film buff. I'm not like anywhere near the caliber of some of the folks that you find here on YouTube. Ian says Richard Bruno died in 2012 at 88. Wow. Well, rest in peace, Mr. Bruno. You did an outstanding job. You built a great legacy. And then goes to show you my faithful moderator, Ian, is on the ball. Thank you, Ian. Thanks for doing what you do. I appreciate it. So yeah, and then this last piece like blew my mind, but it made total sense. The high-end wardrobe partner for this film was none other than Giorgio Armani, right? Giorgio Armani is widely discussed as supplying and advising on as much of the film's polished wardrobe under Vance's direction, though some sources note Armani's role was more broadly credited than he actually executed on every bespoke item. Okay, it doesn't matter, right? To have somebody, he's on the film credits, right? Giorgio Armani is on the film credits. So regardless of like the level of participation that there was from Giorgio Armani, like everybody knows that brand, right? Me and Paul always go over about like the iconic status of brands, and everybody knows Armani. Come on, like it goes without saying. And then what can we say about the hats themselves, right? Al Capone's hat. He was played by Robert De Niro. Multiple production wardrobes write-ups identify the iconic white felt fedora as a Borsellino style piece. It doesn't say Borsellino, it says Borsellino style, right? So maybe it wasn't a Borsellino. Maybe what they did was they had somebody create or recreate a Borsellino style hat for Capone, and it makes sense. I mean, Al Capone is a Brooklyn boy, right? Everybody knows, right? Even though he's synonymous with Chicago, he's originally a Brooklyn boy, kind of like myself. Borsellino makes sense for a guy of Italian descent, right? They're going to be wearing a Borsellino because, again, Al Capone was at some point a boy, just like all of us, right? And he was probably looking at all the people around him wearing Borsellinos, and he's like, that's what I'm wearing, right? We talk about the idea of ascension, right? One of the commonalities that we have in a lot of the movies we've covered is this idea of ascension, right? Al Capone, obviously, in this movie, we're not watching his ascension, right? He's already running Chicago. You see it right in the first scene. Al Capone, played by Robert De Niro, he runs Chicago. Basically, the reporters are like, they should just make you the mayor, right? So we're not talking about his ascension, right? We're talking about the opposite, right? We're talking about we have kind of like the ascension, and then you get to the peak, right? So we start off with Al Capone's peak, and then this movie covers his downfall, right? It's kind of that character arc, right? That's the reason why they call it arc. In statistics, we call it the bell curve, right? Right? All my stats nerds out there, we know about the bell curve and about standard deviations, right? So we're getting at somewhere right around the middle here, around the mean, and then we're covering that kind of that descent for Al Capone. But this is still a story of ascension. It just happens to be Elliot Ness's ascension, right? That's who ascends in this movie, right? There's a couple descents, but the ascension here is very much for Elliot Ness, and that's kind of the hook, right? We got simultaneous, right? So just like one man's trash is another person's treasure, right? One person's ascension could be synonymous with another person's descent, right? That's just how business works, right? Everybody knows, right? At some point, IBM was up here And then Apple started taking them down, right? Like these things they trade places. And that's why business works the way it works, right? It's competition. And this is no less, right? Al Capone's the bad guy. Elliot Ness is the good guy, right? Depending on how you view it. And their stories are intertwined. It's very much like Heat, right? That whole Robert De Niro, Al Pacino character arcs in the movie Heat. Great movie, by the way. Not a hat movie, but I love to cover Heat. That's iconic. Anyway, Richard, let's see. It says here, ChatGPT says, that said, I did not find a public primary source. For example, a studio placard or a milliner credit that says Borsellino made these on-set hats, right? Right. There's no such thing right now that ChatGPT could find. Doesn't mean it's not out there somewhere. That goes to show you, my history nerds, the ones that like do the fine detail, right? I'm kind of the whole Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule, right? I like to get 80% of the way with like 20% of the effort, right? That's why I love ChatGPT. But you guys that are big fans of that other 20%, you guys can go and fill in the gaps here, right? Come in, right? Do the work if you want, right? I'm not giving you guys a task. But if that's what you want to do with your time, then do that and then come back maybe next week, maybe next Fedora Friday. And I'll say, hey, anybody has any order of business, drop a comment or come on screen, right? And talk your talk, right? Do your thing, right? It's kind of shoot your shot, like putting it in basketball terms. But yeah, Richard Bruno's Capone hat story. Bruno is quoted in production reporting, repeated in wardrobe blogs, telling the Sun Sentinel anecdote. He and Capone's former bodyguard found two white Borsellino hat bodies in a vintage hat shop basement that bore the initials of a Capone alias. And those hat bodies were used as the basis to recreate De Niro's on-screen hats. Okay, that story is widely repeated in costume write-ups. So it says BAMF style, and others. I could not locate the Sun Sentinel article text itself in an online archive during this search, but the anecdote appears in several secondary sources citing Bruno. Again, this is when we start getting into kind of like the Bigfoot stuff, right? Everybody like puts this out there, this story. Right now, ChatGPT is telling me, and I feel like this is really good, information, that right now ChatGPT could not locate something verifying that story. So now it's just a story. Doesn't mean it's not true. Doesn't mean it's false, right? But I feel like it's my duty as a researcher to tell you, basically that this is not fact. You may think of it as fact, but until like the evidence comes out later, and it might happen, right? Sometime, it might show up. These original hats might show up. And they could lend some credence, kind of like when we saw those Godfather hats that were auctioned off, right? These things turn up. That's why people are dedicated. Their whole lives are dedicated to uncovering this memorabilia and this nostalgia, right? And sometimes they'll do it and they'll sell it for a handsome profit. But I got to imagine if somebody finds Al Capone's original hat, man, are they going to be like, if they decide that they want to sell it, they're gonna make a pretty penny. Who's not gonna want to own Al Capone's hat? You might as well you'll be talking about the original Scarface, right? That was one of kind of Al Capone's nicknames, I believe, right? I believe he was also called Scarface, right? Right. So regardless of what you think of Al Pacino's Scarface, this is the real Scarface. And I gotta imagine that there's gonna be a bunch of billionaires out there wanting to have the Al Capone's hat, because again, that's how guys are, man. I can't, I don't apologize for it, right? I don't apologize for being a guy. But I know if I had billions of dollars and I saw Al Capone's hat for sale, like guarantee you, I'm going to go and try to get that hat, right? Like if it's going to be me, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, they better pony up, right? Because I'm going to go and I'm going to match them and exceed them. And they might beat me out because who knows? They're probably better billionaires. And I'm not a billionaire, far from it. So, that's kind of a pipe dream. I'm just blowing smoke like guys like to do, right? So anyway, I'm going to move forward. That's ChatGPT. You guys can do your own research, right? And you can fill in the blanks for yourself if you want to, and if you want to share it here on this channel, you're always got a platform. Like I said, you know, if you want a whole show just to uncover what you want, I will create a whole show for you. Like I said, I have the ability to do that, right? I'm not Paramount Studios, right? Or one of these other big studios. I am a one-man show here. And if you if you've invested your time in watching this channel, I'm going to invest in you. Right? Like, and you think I'm lying about that, just see my show, watch my videos. Like, look at all the people that happen, you know, that watch my videos and then found their way onto the show. It's just, I don't lie about these things, you know. I try not to lie at all. Right? So anyway, that's what ChatGPT says. I'm going a little backwards here, but this is another, there's a lot of photos in this thing, and I don't know if I'm going to get through all of them, but I want to kind of just, you know, I thought this was, you know, I saw this online. I just like, all right, this right here tells you everything you need to know about Elliot Ness, right? Like, this is like, if you had to be convinced, or at least a piece of evidence as to the character of Elliot Ness, this right here, right? This is a member of the press saying, hey, they're going to repeal prohibition. What will you do then? And then Elliot Ness replies, I think I'll have a drink. Right? Goes to show you, like, he's there to uphold the law. He has his own feelings, right, about alcohol and what you should do or not do, right? I think that is a really great telling piece of Elliot Ness, the character, and it really endears yourself to him, right? Like, you got to respect that. Let me stop this banner here for a second, and then I'll get Ian's comment. Capone's scars are a very interesting story. Very worth Googling. Well worth Googling. Yeah, definitely. You know, I feel like, again, scars, right? Scars are essentially natural tattoos, right? You know, and it's kind of a very artistic way of viewing body art, right? Right? Okay. We all know that body modification, and I'm not into it. Like, it's not my thing, right? Like, it's one of those things, kind of like when I look at certain hats, right? It's like, that's, you know, I look at a Panama hat. I admire the beauty and what the signaling is. It's just not something that right now, it's not for me. Maybe, who knows? Maybe next year, or maybe tomorrow, I'll get up out of bed and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna modify my body. You know, but there's a lot of people into it, and scarring, right, is a very tribal way of body modification, right? Before there is even ink, right? A lot of tribes will go and scar members, right? And the scarring is not just to maim their fellow tribesmen, right? The scars are symbolic of rites of passage, right? So a lot of tribes will go and take the males that are entering manhood, and they will scar their face or they'll scar their body, right? They'll make modifications that don't involve ink, right? Ink is the thing that can be used. I don't know the history of body modification. I'm not an expert in that area. It's not been something that I've, you know, but I do respect, I respect the art of tattooing. I respect the art of body modification, because I do know a lot of the symbolism that's involved in there. I know enough about that to respect it. Ian says, it was a fight on Coney Island after Capone insulted a man's sister. Yeah, there you go. I believe somebody mentioned this before, that and I don't remember who, because I speak to a lot of folks. Somebody mentioned that Capone's originally from Park Slope, Brooklyn. But a fight on Coney Island makes sense, right? Anybody that knows anything about New York knows about Coney Island. If you don't know anything about Coney Island, you can watch the movie The Warriors, right? And that'll give you a flavor of how Coney Island was. A great movie. Another great movie, right? The Warriors, a cult classic. Not really a hat movie, although I haven't watched it in a little bit. But I love The Warriors, man. What a great movie. Shout out to The Warriors in that cast. What a stellar movie, right? And the guy that is probably the most interesting character on The Warriors is a guy that probably wasn't in the movie for any more than like a few minutes, right? And I'm talking about Cyrus, right? Talk about like characters, man. Like, if you guys follow me on social media, you know why Cyrus is such a great character. and he wasn't even like, I don't even know the exact number of minutes that Cyrus was in the movie, but Cyrus was, man, what a character. Yeah, you could write a whole book, right? You could teach a whole class on the psychology of the character Cyrus, right? Just like you could do the same thing about Bane from Batman. You can do the same thing, well, besides also Batman, but Bane, like these villains, Bill the Butcher, even though Cyrus wasn't a kind of a villain, he was like one of those complex characters, right? That you're like, oh man, this guy, what's he about? He's got a lot of power, right? He's got a lot of power. He's influencing a lot of these gangs. What is it? What is he about? But if you go see him, he's very much about unity, right? Cyrus is kind of like a mixture of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, right? And a little bit with a shades toward Malcolm X, to be honest, right? Both iconic civil rights leaders, right? Both African American, both iconic, had different kind of views, but they respected each other, right? You kind of know, it's like, we may not have the same method, right? We may not be preaching the exact same thing, but we both respect each other. And and Malcolm X was a complex character. Malcolm X, the actual Malcolm X, and I think Denzel killed it in the movie X, Spike Lee movie. I recommend that movie. I recommend a lot of Spike Lee movies, to be honest, right? Again, not necessarily hat movies, but if you go and you watch Do the Right Thing, you watch Mo Better Blues, you watch movie X, like Spike Lee is a very, 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 he's basically a legend walks among us, right? With the hint between him and Quentin Tarantino, like you pretty much got a lot of classic movies between the two, right? And they are still underrated. Like maybe somebody would argue and say, no, they're rated, right? Meaning that they're like, people recognize their genius, Luke. They're not underrated. I don't know. I just tend to think that they are like, why aren't like, there should be classes taught on Spike Lee's film style as well as Quentin Tarantino style. And honestly, I feel like if you taught that class, you might be able to get Spike Lee or Quentin Tarantino to join you. Right? Who wouldn't love that, right? You teach a class on film, and then Quentin Tarantino and Spike Lee, go in there. Maybe they're sitting down watching you talk, right? And they're like, actually, Luke, no, as they say in Spanish, no, right? And they're like, and then they'll, Tarantino will go Jules on you. He's like, allow me to retort. All right. Shout out to Jules, Samuel L. Jackson, man, what an iconic people we're talking about. Anyway, that this is not about those films. Let me just keep it focused. The one thing I wanted to mention here, right, that I probably didn't mention is who directed this film. Well, this is a Brian De Palma film, right? So if you're a fan of Scarface, right? That's also a Brian De Palma film, right? But one thing that's lesser known, that is just as important to reiterate, is that this screenplay, meaning this story that's told in The Untouchables, was written by none other than David Mamet, right? David Mamet is one of America's most famous playwrights, screenwriters, and directors, right? And you know that in terms of David Mamet, like one of my favorite films, and I might not cover it because it's not necessarily a hat film, but I will if you guys want it, is Glengarry Glen Ross, right? Iconic cast, iconic execution, iconic writing. Like, I could go on, like I said, talk about films that you can do and teach a class on. You could write a book on this film, right? And all the intricacies in that film. It's like, it's kind of like, for me, like a George, we talked about George Carlin, right? Me and Ian were talking about George Carlin, right? I feel like David Mamet, right? And I know he's like controversial. I run into folks that are not big fans of David Mamet, right? They feel like he's kind of like, he's just like a cocky guy, right? Like overly cocky, in his style, his writing style, and his, in the way he kind of portrays his characters. But for somebody like myself, I'm like, I kind of go beyond that. David Mamet has, like I said, I give him the same credit that I do to somebody like George Carlin, that he happens to like cut to the core of this, like the right. He cuts to the core of what matters. Right. So like we talked about, Carlin he's well known. Besides talking about the familiar, every comedian talks about familiar stuff, right? They got to do that. Like if you want to see an unfunny comedian, they'll have them, right? If you want to be an unfunny comedian, start talking about things that nobody knows about, right? And then you'll see how like nobody's laughing. Right. So comedians have to talk about the familiar. But what George Carlin did was he took the really simple stuff and he made it complex. And he took the really complex stuff and made it really simple, right? And it's that first part, right, where he goes and he takes something that's like, let me tell you about rocket science, right? And you're like, oh boy, this guy's gonna talk about rocket science, right, to an audience that's obviously not rocket scientists, and neither is he, right? And he's gonna make it funny. Like, talk about higher order comedy, right? Like for me, that's like that's apex comedy to me, right? In the world of comedy, George Carlin, for me, my personal opinion is right up there with everybody, and probably surpasses them. Anyway, I'm getting a little long in the a little bit more verbose. I'm sorry. The other thing I wanted to point this, besides David Mamet and Brian De Palma, is that you may also remember the Untouchables, if you happen to be have been alive, or maybe you watched this show. Yeah, Carlin, I gotta, yes, an understatement. George Carlin, shout out to George Carlin and the great legacy, the great comedy that he left behind. I'm really reverent towards that man. And again, I know that he had demons, right? Just like a lot of us. Man, you could. That's another thing. I don't think you could do a whole curriculum on the demons of Hollywood, right? Right. It's a profession that is synonymous with people battling demons, and trying to conquer their demons, right? It kind of go hand to hand. It's kind of like the artist's arc, right? It's like, well, I do this, right? We just lost Michael Madsen recently, right? Michael Madsen is somebody that's dealt with a lot of struggle. Iconic guy, a guy that never really got his due. But you gotta know Michael Madsen from Kill Bill, Reservoir Dogs, Donnie Brasco, right? Michael Madsen was like, he happened to be an artist, right? He painted. He also wrote poetry, right? He's just a very gentle man that belied, right? Meaning like his on-screen persona as this, like, he was like a modern day James Dean, right? Michael Madsen and James Dean are kind of very similar characters, except that, I think that without being an expert in James Dean, I feel like Michael Madsen comes across as a little bit more menacing in his personality. But the thing is, when you meet the man, meaning that if you go and see him speaking, and a lot of YouTube is full with a lot of these later interviews with Michael Madsen, you will see what a gentle soul this man was, right? Talk about goodness, right? This was a man that was full of a lot of obviously tragedy, right? He turned to drinking to kind of as his medicine of choice, and I'm sure drugs were involved as well, without knowing all all the vices. But a very tortured soul, and but also very sweet man. It's too bad that we never got to see Michael Madsen at 80 or 90 years old. And if you do know somebody that's 80, 90, or even 100 years old, you owe it to yourself to make them your best friend, right? It's like, chances are they know more, right? And I'm a big fan of wisdom. I try to seek wisdom out. There's nothing better than getting your wisdom from an old person, right? Because it's tried and true, right? They've seen more, right? They've done it, and they're not just seen it. They're alive, right? I got to remember, everybody heard about Uncle Dom. Uncle Dom is 97, and I really hope that Uncle Dom lives another 20 years if I could help it, right? Because Uncle Dom, every time I interact with Uncle Dom over in New Jersey, he lives over in Wayne, New Jersey, and he just always says something that, And again, he's got a little bit of dementia, but he does well, and he's always, he's Uncle Dom used to sell insurance, um, and and he always calls us our best. It's like, you guys are my best customers. How sweet is that, right? Like some of that like insurance salesman like tactic, right? We talk about Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Like Uncle Dom has that down, right? Like, and he probably never even like took a Dale Carnegie course. Warren Buffett did, but he might have never read the book, or maybe he did. Maybe Uncle Dom, like Dale Carnegie's book, has been around for a little bit, right? So somebody like Warren Buffett, who was in his 90s as well, credits Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People as a cornerstone, right? He directly attributes that course to a lot of his success, right? And a little bit of an anecdote about Warren Buffett, because I do respect that man as well, is that Warren Buffett happens to be good friends with Bill Gates, right? And it's not because they sought each other out, right? The way I understood it, and if you watch that, I plugged this documentary. It's called Becoming Warren Buffett, right? So if you're a fan of documentaries, you get to see the actual man himself talking about his life, and his family talking about Warren Buffett. It's on YouTube. It's called Becoming Warren Buffett. If you watch that and you don't come away with a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more respect for Warren Buffett, then you can come back and tell me, hey, Luke, you're full of it. But that man is really interesting. And again, he's somebody else that, he reminds me of like a very, very wealthy Uncle Dom, to be honest. So shout out to Warren Buffett. He's an influencer, obviously very wealthy man. But if you follow like brands, right, the power of branding, right, that Warren Buffett has a very different brand than Elon Musk, who also has a very different brand from Bill Gates, right? But two billionaires, right? When I see two billionaires that happen to be best buds, because billionaires compete with each other, right? They're not opposed to competing, right? They got to where they're at because they're competing. They're actually best buds, and there's a big age gap, right? Their wives got them together and into a room, and then they had a little exercise that they played, right? So once they started kind of feeling each other out and say, okay, I like this guy in front of me, right? They were like a little bit of like, hey, I don't have time for this. But once they got together, the wives knew better, right? They got them together, and then they went and they played a little game that said, let's write down the one word that is attributable to your success, right? So they went without even each other, right? They didn't peek. They all wrote down the word, and guess what happened? They came up with the same word, right? Would you like to know what that word is? It's got 5 letters. The word is focus. Focus. Now, that story right there is worth you watching that documentary. Like, I don't get anything out of this other than this, something that Luke happens to like and love. Maybe you'll love it, maybe you'll hate it. I don't know, but I'm giving you a little bit of Luke, right? So Luke loves Warren Buffett. Big fan of that man. Again, I don't know him. Kind of wish I knew him, right? I'm sure if I had a little bit of Warren Buffett money, I'd have. Wow, who knows what I would like? You probably would have to like. Who knows what the hat collection will look like? Man, geez. Anyway, Ian says Michael Madsen was great in Vengeance Unlimited. Yeah, I have not seen too many things. Like, I don't recall if I saw Vengeance Unlimited, to be honest. Now I'm going to check it out because Michael Madsen, I've never seen him in a bad, like, he's never in a bad role. Like, I haven't seen it. And I feel like it's not a coincidence. Michael Madsen has a heart of an artist, and you guys already know I love artists. So thank you, Ian, for sharing that. I'm gonna try to find that movie and watch it now. And who knows? I don't know if it's a hat movie, but like I said, at some point we're gonna run out of hat movies here. So and again, I realize that I'm getting a little bit verbose. So let me try to stay on track here. But what I wanted to point out here is that you may not be old enough to have seen this series. I know I'm not, but there was an Untouchable TV series. Yeah, exactly. In 1959. It was a crime drama. It starred Robert Stack as Elliot Ness, I believe, and really, Really good show is, again, I've not seen it, but I know a lot of people are fans of the show, and I feel like I can't talk about the movie without mentioning the show. And obviously the show is like a typical crime drama of that time, right? They're not going to be able to show the level of violence, right? Because TV in 1959 was a heck of a lot different than TV now, right? Even TV now is very different than TV was even 20 years ago. Or 30 years ago, right? A lot of movies that were made in the 80s, right? That I happen to enjoy will never get made. Never. And this is the part, like, the whole, like, never say never, right? Like, if they go and I can pick some movies and I'm like, if you make this in 2025 or 2026, if somebody makes this movie, I'm like, I'm gonna be on the floor, right? Like, you're gonna floor this this man right here in front of you, because you know the movies I'm talking about, and if you don't, we'll have a conversation about it. Maybe not on the channel, but Ian says they were still showing it when I was a Sprague. I love Ian. Talk about Ianisms, right? And again, I don't know if this is Ianisms in as much as like Londonisms or UKisms, but the Sprague. Oh my gosh, Ian. I love it. I love the language. When I was a Sprague, Ian, you're gold, my man. So yeah, so let me get on this with the thing, because this is what you guys all came for. But I showed this again. I want to show this again because this goes to show you, right? Everybody remembers this movie. They're like, nobody talks about Kevin Costner. I mean, that's not true, right? People talk about Kevin Costner, but he's kind of like in many ways, a little bit of a nothing burger. I think that's underrated. His character is not a nothing burger, right? Far from it. It's a complex character. This, I think, shows a lot of the complexity that Elliot Ness has. I feel that because it's a comparison thing, right? Because De Niro and to a smaller extent, Sean Connery really like killed it, right? I felt like Elliot Ness's character kind of falls a little bit, like it plays a little second fiddle, even though this is his story, right? He's Rocky in this movie, right? If this is a Rocky story of ascension, right? Elliot Ness is Rocky, right? And maybe Sean Connery is Mick, right? And if you kind of know where I'm going with this, you know what Sean Connery's character's fate is, in this movie. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So yeah, and anyway, let's just keep going. Here's just going to be like, I got a series of like shots, right? And I call them like gang, like, right? We're talking about crews, right? We talked about, right? If you guys have seen my past live streams, you guys know that I'm a Brooklyn boy. When I was growing up in Brooklyn, let's see here. Josh said a comment. I'm used to Costner in Westerns. This was a good role for him. Yeah, agreed. Speaking of, Josh, this is actually a great. So again, you always reminded me, this is how powerful my conversation was with Steve Heck. Shout out to Steve. Yeah, I don't know if you're watching this or not, but Steve and I, when we were talking, one of our many conversations and topics that we discussed is kind of like the love of the high crown, right? And Steve is one of those things where it's like, we had that conversation. It's like, yeah, the high crowns, I dig them, right? Like, I'm just starting to get into the higher crown stuff. And Steve, I thought, put it really eloquently and succinctly, right? In terms of like the connection. He says the reason why a lot of people really, and again, I'm going to just say that this is Steve Heck's opinion that I happen to, I think, agree with. Again, not knowing what a lot of you guys know, but Steve mentioned that a lot of the love for the high crown for amongst our hatting community has roots in the Western style hat, right? So like that big, kind of like that 10-gallon hat, the big old Western hat. And in that style, that Western hat style evolved into the fedora that kind of ruled the day in the 20s and 30s, right? That high crown that people really love, right? But that the fedora and the people love that era. And they're like, no, anything that came afterwards is bunk, right? When the crown started getting lower, but that's the evolution of hat history, right? there's reason, like nobody should go and limit themselves, right? I feel like that's so weird to like limit yourself. But again, why does Luke love the low crown? Well, I'll mention the same thing I mentioned before. I mentioned this to Steve, is that as a Brooklyn boy, right, growing up in the 80s, right, Luke was an observant boy, right? I think you can kind of imagine that, right? That I was always a psychologist. I just never got trained as a psychologist up until I became an adult, right? A young adult. But I was always a psychologist, I was always observing people around me. I was observing my dad, right? I was observing my mom. I was observing the people in my neighborhood, and the people in my neighborhood dressed with, well, and you guys seen my knockaround hat, right? I call it my Frank Sinatra hat, right? This is my Knox custom, right? If you don't believe me that I wear this hat so much, right? Besides the fact, look at the shape it's in, right? Look at that sweatband wear on this Knox Tom and Jerry. Hey Morgan, how's it going? Morgan, hi, how are you? Oh man, we missed you on the channel, but I know, like I saw your Facebook post, Morgan, and I can't wait, to hear about some of the great things that are happening with you. Shout out to Morgan. She's my other moderator here. Morgan's been busy, but Morgan, man, your hat game is like, you have apex hat game. If everybody don't know, Morgan's not even 20 years old. And she's got the Huff Bud happening. She's getting into leather jackets. Ian says hello. Yeah, and so I was talking to Morgan. Yeah, I love the thing. This is Cheers, right? Remember, guys, good looks. The vision for this channel is not for me to go and just show you all of my my hats and maybe to kind of like brag about what a great hat collection I got. Like I got for what I consider a good hat collection, right? But you know what I mean? That's not the point of this channel. The point of this channel is this, right? Hi, Ian. Hi, Morgan. Hi, Josh. You see, that's what happens, right? That's what you do at Cheers, right? I didn't call the show Cheers because I wanted to give it, my own personal brand. But basically, if I had a tagline, it's like the hat version of Cheers, right? Where everybody knows your name and they're always glad you came, right? Exactly. Even if you can't show up, right? Morgan hasn't been able to show up, but she's got big things going on. She's a student, yeah, just Morgan, welcome, and you can stay for as long as you need to, and bounce out whenever you need to. But hopefully you can stay because we miss you, man. Right? It was like we miss Morgan. She's got like great input, right? Just like all the rest of you. And and we're gonna just keep doing it. And Morgan's gonna join us when she can. But we love having you, Morgan. Thank you. So yeah, back to Josh's comment here. Josh said, low crowns are good at keeping heat in. High crowns are good at keeping cool. That's, I like that. I like that. I like that. I like that idea as well. Like the functional basis of the crown. That's something that I've not heard that, but that kind of makes sense. That makes sense to me. So I like that. I like that, Josh. Yeah, I love it. What else here? What else? Ian says hat spreading love. Yeah, that's right. Remember, I love hats, but I love the idea of love, right? Right? Love conquers all, right? Love is greater than hate, right? If you guys, I talked about the idea of iconic characters and iconic movies and iconic directors. Spike Lee, Do the Right Thing, Radio Raheem, right? Radio Raheem has kind of like his two hands. One of them, he has two those 4-finger rings that were popular in the 80s, right? In like my neighborhood and in a lot of the neighborhoods in New York, we had the 4-finger rings. And Radio Raheem was a guy that had love on one, and he had the word hate on the other. And he had a very powerful speech about the power of love and hate, right? And it's very like Ali. Right, it's like Radio Raheem kind of channeling Ali, but with a message, right? Although Muhammad Ali taught a message. Trust me. That shout out to Muhammad Ali. I'm not trying to diminish anything that he's ever said, but Radio Raheem really was iconic. And again, a guy that's like not in terms of minutes, not a whole lot, but he's iconic, and you kind of know where I'm getting at. Like, shout out to Spike Lee. Shout out to, I forget the actor's name, but he's worked with Spike Lee on several films. He was in Mo Better Blues. He's been in several movies, like, you know, the actor. But shout out to him, because Radio Raheem stole the show, right? A lot of guys stole the show in that movie. Obviously, Sal, played by Danny Aiello. You had John Turturro, the gentleman that played Gus Fring from Breaking Bad. I forget his name, but I think it's like Giancarlo Alfonso. I believe that's his name. Giancarlo Alfonso. Like, that guy is it, man. That guy is, man. He was in King of New York. You've seen him, and he is an iconic character in Do the Right Thing. That whole movie is full of iconic characters. The mayor, right? The mayor in that movie. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Let's see here. Morgan says, yes, I've been very busy. Sorry to stray away from the current topic. I'm supposed to be moving to my own place. Oh my gosh, Morgan, congratulations. Shout out to Morgan, moving to her own place. Man, Morgan, I salute you. That's fantastic news, man. That is, man, that made my day, Morgan. To be honest, that made my day. We'll have to stay in touch, right? So I'm gonna be heading to New York, right? We already said we're gonna get together. I don't know if you're still gonna be in the process of moving in, but yeah, congrats indeed. Josh says congrats. I say congrats. On behalf of Good Lukes, congrats, right? Like I said, talk about milestones, right? Robert Galt, when he came on here, he made like one of the most important things that he talked about, and so did Paul, right? Both Robert and Paul talked about this, and I think Paul might have been the first one, to be honest, right? And I could have mixed it up. I'm pretty sure it's Paul, but Robert probably also said the same thing. The milestone hat, right? Right? Kind of like for some guys, it's like buying that Rolex, right? And I say guys, but I mean guys and gals, right? Women buy Rolexes, not the women's Rolexes. They'll buy men's watches for men, and they will wear them like the big old honking Rolexes, because it's a milestone, right? Like, some people talk about like, well, why are you buying a Rolex, right? I don't own a Rolex, but I never go to somebody, well, why the heck do you buy a Rolex for? That's a waste of money. No, it's not. No, it's not. Just because I don't own one doesn't mean I think it's a waste of money. Rolexes are kind of like getting yourself an Optimo or a Huff Bud, right? Or now a PJ Murphy and Son, right? Right? It's a milestone. Like, you spend the money because it means you are celebrating yourself. Maybe, right? Maybe you're going to get married. Maybe you're going to move into your own place, right? Like Morgan's doing. You do these things to commemorate, right, a special milestone in your life, right? And it doesn't have to be a Rolex. I'm not saying that you can only do that. You can get yourself an Omega. You can get yourself a Longines, right? Like I got. Or you're only going to get yourself a Timex, right? Right? I love Timex. Timex is a great brand. So is Casio, right? If you're a watch nerd, no watch nerd that's self-respecting will look away at a Casio or a Seiko or a Timex, because those are rich. Those brands have a rich history, right? And not everybody's got Rolex money or Omega money to go and commemorate, right? So not everybody's got Optimo money or Huff Bud money or Hanskov money or even PJ Murphy and Son money, right? You know what I mean? Like, these are significant purchases, and you do so to celebrate milestones in your life. And I celebrate that celebration, right? So it's not lost on me. Oh, I love the camaraderie here. So Ian says, we missed you, Morgan, but it's great that you're flying high. Yeah, completely agree. Morgan says, and when I get settled in, I will most definitely come on the panel for a hat chat. Sounds good, Morgan. I appreciate it, because you got so much, no, Morgan, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Like I said, you didn't have to share that. That's kind of like your personal life. And but it's such great news, man. Such great news. I love that stuff, like it reminds me of it just reminds me of myself. Everybody knows why that's so important, right? So even like seasoned folks like me, Ian, again, basically compared to you, Morgan, everybody here is probably pretty seasoned, right? You are unless we get like some high schoolers here, which I really doubt, but who never know. right? We might get like I had an old soul when I was in high school, right? I was still kind of listening to hip hop music, right? If you are on my Facebook channel, you see a lot of you see a lot of my posts, and I will go and first of all, I love music, and you've seen that I'm pretty eclectic in my taste. But hip hop music to me is very iconic. It's synonymous with my Brooklyn background, my Brooklyn upbringing. So what I would do is I'd be the guy in high school, like, and I'm not any different. I was like a lot of other guys. We'd go and we have our headphones on, listening to our music. And I was big into the Wu-Tang Clan. I was big into the Notorious B.I.G. Jay-Z was probably a little bit later, after high school, because I'm graduated and in that, like, but Biggie Smalls, right? A lot of these guys, Spike Lee. I was talking about Spike Lee. Spike Lee had a store, his Spike's joint, right across the street from my old high school, right? At one point I saw Busta Rhymes, right? Everybody knows Busta Rhymes, or at least if you don't know him, he's a character. But Busta Rhymes, I remember going to school and seeing Busta Rhymes waiting outside a Spike's joint. And I didn't stop him. I didn't want to like bother him, one, because I was late for school. And also I'm like, this guy was like, and Busta Rhymes had on the black leather jacket. He had the dreadlocks, right? Busta Rhymes is just like Biggie Smalls, is of Jamaican descent, right? And he is very bombastic, right? So, right, if you guys know my style, I love the bombasticness, right? That's why I love interacting with somebody like Brian, right? And we all kind of have our level, right? Like, even if you're not bombastic, you know what it is to be bombastic. And Busta Rhymes was like the epitome of bombastic, right? Another gentleman that was the epitome of bombastic is Old Dirty Bastard, right? Of the Wu-Tang Clan, right? Busta Rhymes still alive. Old Dirty Bastard, aka Russell Jones, is somebody that passed away, and you kind of know, if you knew the story of the Old Dirty Bastard, right? The reason why it's called the Old Dirty Bastard is, right, if you guys know about the Wu-Tang, there was no father to his style, right? Like, there's nobody like me, right? Isn't that awesome, right? Like, again, it's a little cocky, right? It's like, there's nobody in the world like me. Like, you can't do it, right? Because unless you walked in my shoes and did everything the way I did it, there's no way you could be like me, right? And there's just a certain wisdom in that, right? There's a level of cockiness, but there's also wisdom, right? And you guys know that rappers are not known for their lack of confidence, right? You don't get into that style of music if you're not ready, right? You got to do battle, right? That's why somebody like like a Puerto Rican boy, right? We are folks that are descendants of African slaves, right? And then we have obviously Spanish Europeans, right? But we also have the indigenous people of Puerto Rico, the Taino Indians, right? You're not an indigenous person and you don't know the idea of war, right? Right? If you are somebody that shoots weapons, right? Right? I like shooting. I haven't gotten into shooting in a long time, right? But 9mm, right? 9mm is parabellum, right? Parabellum is Latin, right? Is Latin for, what does it mean? For war, right? It's the NATO round, right? The NATO uses 9mm, right? And it's 9mm parabellum. Parabellum stands for war, right? And that old adage, right? Si vis pacem, parabellum, right? If you want peace, prepare for war, right? It's not the happiness, but it's still education, right? That I'm gonna kind of share. Again, I'm sharing a little bit more about myself and what makes Luke tick every stream. So yeah, I got off on a tangent. Let me see where else we're at here. Josh talks about milestone hats. My milestone hat is the beaver chinchilla felt body. I love it, Josh. Yeah, that's a chinchilla, right? I also talked to Steve. I know I keep mentioning Steve because the thing is, it left an impression on me. But Steve's a good dude. But we talked about, like, right, he's into the hat making process, right? He talked about velour, the real velour process, the Ector, right? The Ector velour process. And one thing I had a question for him was, like, what about mink, right? Why aren't we seeing more mink hats, right? I know there's a cost to it, right? Beaver obviously is really, really expensive. But you would think, right? There's the idea of the mink coat. Why are they not mink hats? Maybe they are, right? But like the mink fedora, right? I just think of like somebody like we were talking with Brian Forbes. We were talking about a guy like Frank Lucas, right? Frank Lucas, right? If you watch the movie American Gangster, right? Maybe I'll do that movie at one point too, because I really love American Gangster, man. I really love the like Frank Lucas character. Denzel killed it. Like you guys already know, Denzel is like one of my favorite actors, right? Even though Denzel is not somebody that's known for his range, right? We talk about the idea of emotional range, right? With actors like Leo DiCaprio, Shia LaBeouf, right? Guys that could really show you all aspects of the human range of emotion. Denzel was somebody that's like, all right, his range is not there, but what Denzel does, he does best, or one of the best, right? And it's no coincidence that he's icon, he's an icon, in his craft. But American Gangster, Frank Lucas is a real character. Brian, when he was on here, if you want to catch him, Brian Forbes, he was like, I was coming in there having a real chat with him, right? We were like having a real kind of a talk, a man-to-man talk. And I do the same way, right? Like if you meet me in person, I try, unless like my energy levels are down, right? Like if you don't see me this way, when I'm talking to you, it's because I'm low energy, right? And when I'm low energy, I'm not going to be talkative. But I talk the same way, right? In real life. If you guys have met me, like people that seen this show and they met me, they say like, no, Luke is like that. That's Luke right there. You know what I mean? It's like, he's like twitchy, right? He goes 0 to New York very quickly, and then like this, you have to do this. Bring it down, Luke, right? Bring it down. So yeah, one of the things that I had in my mind was like, okay, why not mink? Because right, like we know about the Frank Lucas coat, right? That was kind of like synonymous with his downfall in that movie, right? He's like, as soon as he put that mink on, that's when, oh boy, he messed up, right? Because that's how he got on the radar for the cops. They're like, who's this guy wearing a mink coat? And why don't we know that guy? Like that guy's somebody. And that's how they, right? And then he knew it, right? Lucas knew it. He's like, and then he blamed his wife, right? He had a Puerto Rican wife, and she was the one that got him to wear the coat. And it's very like something very biblical about that, right? About that scene, right? Like, and again, I hate bringing this up but it is one of those themes that is repeated, right? It's repeated in the Bible, it's repeated in the Greek story, right? About the downfall of man, right? It's usually kind of associated and again, I think it's unfair to my female viewers because I don't like that idea, but we can't ignore it, right? The idea of like Adam and Eve, right? Of how like essentially Eve was the cause of Adam's downfall, right? They had a perfect life up until Eve went and got deceived, right? But it doesn't mean that we ignore it, right? Like I said, we are living in different times. We're a lot more aware of the value of women and women in society, right? They're very good in the workplace. I feel like that, women can do so many things that men can't do. In many ways, they do fashion better, right? Like everybody knows, right? If you go and you see a guy that's really well put together, right? And there might be a woman right behind them. You know what I mean? Like doing the style, right? I just bought a jacket, right? I just bought like a leather jacket. I bought two jackets by a company called Shot. Shout out to Shot. They're based in New York, right? I bought a leather jacket that you guys probably all seen. I posted it on my Facebook. I bought it from a really great gentleman. Shout out to you, Dan, for selling me that jacket. It gave me a great deal. Dan, it couldn't fit in the jacket because Dan had a milestone in his life. He lost a bunch of weight, right? And so, kind of like I said, because he managed to go and get his weight down, well, now he could enjoy this jacket and he wanted to give it a new home. And luckily that jacket found its way to me. So I bought that jacket from Dan. And then I met a great couple in Arlington, and I bought the couple's, like the husband, who was like a big, like, oh my God, this guy was like a football player, right? He was like, but not like in a big, like fat sense. Like he was like, if you know about body shapes, that triangle that's associated with guys, right? Like the shoulders, like he was like he was like a textbook triangle, right? I geometric patterns like that. That's a thing, right? And he was a perfect triangle. I'm like, whoa, this is like, so when I saw him, I'm like, I'm not going to fit like that. We don't have the same body style, right? But the idea was this jacket, his wife, this gentleman's wife said, this jacket's too big for you. meaning that you have a slender frame, you need to wear a more form-fitting jacket, you know? And I'm like, yeah, listen to your wife and then sell me the jacket, you know? And that's what they did. They gave me a great deal, just like Dan did. And they were sweet couple, man. You know, I love meeting good people, you know what I mean? You know, and there's so many good people out there. So shout out to them. Shout out to Dan for selling me those 2 jackets. You know, really great company. Morgan, I saw, just got a leather jacket as well. Shout out to Morgan. Morgan's doing it up. And then, yeah, Woot Timex. That's right, Josh. You know, like, you know, I'm like, you know, don't play around with Timex. Timex is a great brand. If you got a hat nerd, like if you got a watch nerd that doesn't respect Timex, they don't respect Seiko, they don't respect Casio, then they're probably not a watch nerd, right? They're like, you know, some guy that's out like for like status, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? You know, I don't like, if you got the money and you got money for a Rolex and you couldn't be bothered with a Timex because, you know, it's like, I just got Rolex. Rolex is a great brand. Patek Philippe, great brand. Like Patek Philippe is a grail watch for me. You know what I mean? Like I don't think I'm ever gonna get a Patek Philippe. Right? I already know the model too, right? Like me and Josh like the field watch. Right? We love the field watch because I like to see those numerals. Even though this is not a field watch, this is a dress watch. But again, this is a family heirloom. Right? So you know, this was given to me by Uncle Dom's brother. Right? So you know. This is not, you know, shout out to Uncle Dom. You know, like honestly, I felt touched that the family, you know, my Jersey family, right, and that kind of goes into Florida, right? Because I got ties to Jersey. I got family in Florida, you know, over in like the West Palm Beach area, like northern Miami. And then this watch, they allowed me to take this watch into possession, and I was touched by it. You know, it was just given to me, and like it's my favorite watch. You know, you've seen this watch probably in every stream, and there's no like there's a good reason, right? Like just like you've seen this pi symbol, right? This is not a chai, this is a pi. So shout out to my Jewish viewers, right? If you're watching this, Luke is not Jewish. You know, although I do respect the Jewish culture tremendously. You know, this is a pi. You know, and I'm a big believer in mathematics, right? The statistics, right? I'm also a big believer in the symbolism of the term pi, because, well, you know, besides me, you know, besides that, it's fun to say I'm a pi guy, right? Right? You know about pi. I've explained this before. It's a metaphor for the infinite, right? Not the infinite of like dollars, right? Although it can be that for some people, right? Like some people are out being, I want all the dollars in the world, all of them, right? We're a collectivist. Some people collect dollars, right? Like they collect, you know, like I collect hats, right? Right. And I get that, right? I get the idea. I get the allure. But the idea is infinite potential, right? In my role, right? So like Luke loves baseball. Luke loves the New York Mets. I made this metaphor in this comparison. Luke will never play for the New York Mets, you know, right? Never's going to happen. No matter how bad we get, Luke is never going to pitch for the New York Mets. He's never going to go step up to the plate in a Mets uniform officially, right? So Luke does not have the potential to do that. Or nor am I ever going to play center or point guard for the New York Knicks, right? Shout out to the Knicks, shout out to the Mets. You know, this is my new Knicks hat. But I'll show you that later on, like in a different, like when Paul's on. Yeah, but Luke can do what he can do, right? He has his own circle of competence. Luke is a researcher, right? Right. Luke is a lover of history. Luke is somebody that speaks in the third person, right? Whatever it is, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna max out Luke, right? Whatever Luke is able to do, I'm going to do it to the highest possible degree possible. So in which case, within Luke's circle of competence, and using Warren Buffett terms, right? Warren Buffett talks about stay within your circle of competence. Within my circle of competence, I believe in infinite potential, right? So I'm going to go and try to take this channel as far as I can. I'm going to try to go and help me and my friends get to where they're going as much as I can, right? We're all here in this together, right? We all have that commonality. Nobody gets out of this game alive, right? In this game of life. So, right, just like the Beatles said, you know, and I mentioned this before to Paul, I get by with a little help from my friends, right? It's a powerful statement, and it's the truth, right? I'm not going to sit here and just slice the truth according to Luke, right? So that may be worth nothing to you, but hey, it's my life, right? It's like, it is what I is. I am what I am, right? Like Popeye said. Yeah. So Ian says, imagine a full house online. Yeah. I mean, again, that's the idea, right? The idea behind this is that, I want to build the best bar, right? I want to build the best online bar where we just happen to talk about hats, right? But we also talk about what's going on outside of hats, right? Morgan's moving in. Paul's on travel doing something really big, I'm sure. But again, I don't need to know what Paul's doing. I know Paul, the character, like I know the man as well as I know him up to this point, and I know that he's doing big things. And we all are, right? We all have our own journey. We're all trying to get somewhere. And we're like, I'm just happy to have people here on this journey with me, right? Like this is just right. We only get on this stream for about a couple hours a day. And look at this. We're about an hour and a half, and I barely talked about this movie. So let me switch gears. But that's what Cheers is about, man. Right? Is this just like my hats? These movies are a straw man, right? I do this to get people on here and get a conversation going. And like this, right? Look, Ian. I don't know. Justified Ancients of Mumu. I don't know what that means, Ian, but I'm interested. Can't teach us English much. Can't teach us English much about war. Understood, Ian. Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, hey, it's one like, man, wow. Again, I won't talk about it again. I respect Ian way too much. I respect his knowledge way too much to start going into a conversation about this. But I'd love to have that conversation at some point, right? When I'm a little bit more prepared. And I feel like I probably never get there, right? My ADHD will kick in. I'll be like, it's kind of almost time for Hat Tuesday #6, and you're right. That's how my brain works, right? Like I go and I rewatch my streams. I go watch the streams from Paul. I watch the streams of Johnny. I watch Kevin Gerber's channel. I watch my son, who's also a YouTuber. Shout out to my son, doing really well on YouTube. I hope you reach your infinite potential with that. You inspired me to even do this. So shout out to my son, Chris. He's a good kid. But yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, you just want to keep doing it. You just want to have people that are going to like rock with you on your journey. Right. Right. So you got to go and if you have somewhere you got to go, right. You got to get there. And sometimes, you got to realize if somebody's preventing you from getting to where you got to go. Right. So that goes to show you. I think let me tie this into the movie, because this movie is about, well, a bunch of characters that get together to go and fill a goal, right? This is all based around Elliot Ness, but this is the cast and crew here. So let me just show you, right? And obviously you can see the hats, right? Starting from the right, I believe this is Jim Malone, right? This is Sean Connery. He kills it. He is the paternal figure here. He's basically kind of like the good version of Al Capone, right? He's a guy that doesn't mind getting his hands dirty, right? Remember when we talked about the movie LA Confidential, right? This in many ways, right? He's kind of like the muscle. He's the brains of the operation. He is the old man, that guidance, that right? He's the old cop that is going to teach these young guys. And he's found bravery, right? What is it that drew Sean Connery's Jim Malone character into this fold, right? Because he was working a beat, right? Jim Malone's character was working a beat, and he runs into Kevin Costner and makes an impression on him. This is kind of the beautiful part of this movie that I feel like sometimes gets lost in all of like the wardrobe and the hats and the Hollywoodness, right? Is that there's like a father-son relationship here between Sean Connery and Kevin Costner's character, between Jim Malone and Elliot Ness, right? They kind of respect each other, right? He sees a little bit of himself in Elliot Ness, and he's telling us, he's like, right? He's like, oh man. So essentially, The reason, what's the hook here? Essentially, Sean Connery, Jim Malone is looking at Elliot Ness and is like, man, I used to be that way, you know? Then at some point got scared, right? I started getting really comfortable in this job, right? I knew not to rock the boat, right? And we tend to do that as we get older. You're like, oh, you know, like with this YouTube channel, I could have said, oh man, no, I'm approaching 50. I got an actual job. I could just like forget about it, right? Let's not do this YouTube channel. But you know, every once in a while you see somebody else doing it and you're like, oh man, you know, and they inspire you to do things, right? And that's that's the connection between Jim Malone and Elliot Ness in this movie, right? So yeah, I'll kind of go a little bit more as we go into those photos. But we got two other characters here. We got obviously right next. So we have Jim Malone, we got Elliot Ness, and then next we have Andy Garcia, right? He plays George Stone, and he kind of steals a lot of scenes as well, right? He's Andy Garcia. Everybody knows like Andy Garcia, the actor, right? He eventually became really well known, right? I think a lot of people know him for The Godfather Part 3. Godfather Part 3 is a very, very controversial film. You guys know I love The Godfather. But everybody kind of universally agrees that Godfather 3 is the worst of the franchise, right? They should have never made it, yada, yada, yada. I think Andy Garcia made a really good showing for himself, honestly. To be honest about it, Andy Garcia, him and Joe Mantegna's character as Zaza, Joey Zaza, in The Godfather 3, those were like the two iconic characters that really, I think, steal the show. There's a couple other ones, and one day maybe I'll go over and we'll do Godfather 3, but not before we do Godfather 2. So you guys got to vote, right? I might include Godfather 2 in the next thing, but, you know, right now it hasn't made its way. I'm kind of a little surprised, to be honest, because you know how I feel about The Godfather. I just felt everybody was going to go and vote for that. The original Godfather got the nod. Godfather Part 2 has not gotten any votes. I think it might have gotten one vote in a previous poll. But anyway, Andy Garcia, you can see the profile here on the hat. He's got a lighter color fedora, right? He's kind of a new kid. They recruit him. George Stone is not his real name, right? If you watch the movie, Sean Connery, who's a very, like I said, a street savvy cop, right? He goes and sees right through the smoke screen, right? That Andy Garcia's character, George Stone, is trying to put up, right? He changes his name, right? He's a kid from the neighborhood, right? He's essentially the reason why he joins this band of brothers here is because, well, right, right, like kind of to put it in Denzel Washington terms of Training Day, to be a wolf, to catch a wolf, you got to be a wolf, right? And neither Sean Connery nor Elliot Ness is an Italian guy, right? Right. The guy they're hunting is an Italian guy, a guy from Brooklyn, a street guy, Al Capone, right? This George changed his name because he was a street kid, right? You didn't know, you could fill in the blanks, right? They didn't go into it in the, in the movie, right? They just say, okay, he confesses that his real name is Giuseppe Pietri, right? And he's like, oh, and he could see Sean Connery saw right through that. He said, tell me what your real name is. He tells him, and then he goes and insults him, right? That goes to show you Sean Connery is like, he's a puppeteer, right? He's a master manipulator, right? So he knows what buttons to push. He's like, let me see what you're about. I'm going to go and show Elliot, right? Not because I need to know, right? Sean Connery's like, I don't need to know. I know who you are, but I got to show this to the boss, right? The boss is Elliot Ness. He's the one that has to go and make the determination whether he's going to bring this kid on from the academy. And Sean Connery, in order to show Elliot who this guy was and why he should be part of the team, he goes and makes a statement about Italians, right? I'm not going to use the word because, I've tried to keep, even in context, I won't use it, but you know the word. He calls him that and gets the reaction right there, right? And then, right, everybody knows, right? If you grew up in New York, right? If you grew up in Chicago, you grew up in LA, you grew up like Miami, any big city, Philadelphia, Newark, New Jersey, right? Baltimore, Washington, D.C., I'm probably missing a lot of big cities. So sorry if I didn't mention your city, but if you grew up like the way I grew up, right, you knew that that's how you get under somebody's skin, right? You go and you attack the thing that they can't change, right? And that's their ethnicity, right? Right? It's one thing you're fat, right? You're a fat kid, you got messed up teeth, those things are changeable, but you can't change your culture and your background, right? So you go attack their ethnicity first, right? Because they know they can't change that. You can't change, right? You change your name, you can't change where you came from, right? So Sean Connery's like, let me show you. He goes, makes the insult, and right away he gets the reaction that he was trying to elicit, right? He's like a psychologist, right? He gets stimulus and response. Jim Malone provided the stimulus, got the desired response from Giuseppe, who was fashioning himself as George, and that's all Elliot had to see, right? He's like, and now Sean Connery did two things. One, he revealed he got his way, right? He got George part of this team because he knew he was part of it, but he also gained even more respect from Elliot Ness, because Elliot's like, whoa, what did I just see here? Kind of like, I don't know what, you know what I mean? So Elliot's like, he's just telling him that this is why you got me, right? It's like, this is what I do for you, right? You leave it to me, right? He's building trust in Elliot Ness. And at the same time, George, right? Giuseppe, Anthony Garcia's character, is also watching what's going on. And he's like, oh man, I like this. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I get to be myself, right? That's what he's doing. What's in it for me, right? We always talk about the what's in it for me. George is like, oh, so you want me to sign up to get killed, right? To go against Al Capone? And he's like, yeah, sign me up. I live for this shit, right? Right? He's like, sorry for the expletive, but he's like, sign me up. So that's what we look. Because again, to go against Al Capone in this time is suicide, right? Only the only two characters that really know, right? At this point, is, and like, and I say really know, right? Is probably Sean Connery's character, but George also knows. Like, George is from the neighborhood. He knows what it means, right? That's probably why he changed his name. Maybe he knew Al Capone and had to change his name because he knew that Capone would like make it problematic for him, right? Why else would he do that? There's a couple reasons, but you know what I mean? I'll leave it at that. I don't want to speculate too much because, well, I could go on forever on that. But like, there's like varying degrees of knowledge of what it means amongst these characters, of what it means to go against Al Capone at that time, right? And the viewer is watching this and he's like, oh boy, right? It's like watching Voltron assemble right before your eyes, right? This is like this is kind of like the training scene from Rocky, right? He's like, all right, this is the montage. I'm gonna go get my crew, and then the fourth member here, right? So obviously this is a tetrad, right? It's not a quintet, it's not a trio, it's a tetrad, right? We got the fourth member, and you can see he's the most diminutive guy. He's basically the nerd, right? He's the accountant. This is not a traditional cop. This is a forensic accountant, right? And you already know why he's important, right? Like, you already know, if you know about history, that Al Capone his downfall was tax evasion, right? And then obviously after tax evasion, his ultimate downfall was syphilis, right? He died in the jail cell of syphilis. But what got him into jail was tax evasion. And this gentleman, right? This is Oscar Wallace, right? He's played by Charles Martin Smith, and his character is really pivotal, right? Because he gives Elliot Ness the blueprint for how to take down Al Capone. He shows his cards early, right? They do a lot of foreshadowing here. It's like, oh man, this forensic accountant is telling you, this guy, this is how you take him down. And Elliot Ness doesn't want to hear all that jazz, right? Elliot Ness is like, no, I'm taking this guy down my way, right? But right, and you can already see where this is leading to, right? It's kind of like, no, you had the way, right? Oscar told you the way, but you ignored it. You tried it your way, right? Right? It's kind of like we try to do too much in our lives. We try to be a little too much like Frank Sinatra. We try to do it our way. But sometimes you got to read the writing on the wall, right? Sometimes the answer is right in front of your nose, and you're just too stubborn, right? Because us guys, we can be very stubborn about things, right? We want to do things our way, but sometimes you have to take the path of least resistance, right? And that path was there all along for Elliot Ness to take, but he chose he chose the more traditional path, and it blew up in his face, right? Like, you know where this movie's going, right? It blew up in his face. So it's very beautifully done. It's a beautiful story, right? Again, David Mamet crafted this story. Shout out to David Mamet. Again, I know a lot of people don't like his work, but I happen to love this movie. I also love Glenn Ross, right? If you talk about one of my favorite David Mamet movies, even though it's not necessarily a hat movie, right? But it even ranks higher than the Untouchables, right? And by now you can kind of already know that I really like the Untouchables. But Glenn Ross, for myself, right, in my juncture in my life, Glenn Ross is like even more elevated in my mind, right? But yeah, Ian, I wonder what you think about it. If you're a fan of Glenn Ross, Ian's kind of like Ian and Josh are kind of like my movie deputies, right? I really respect their opinions, But anyway, hats, right? Obviously, like, we got 3 fedoras here, kind of styled a little differently, definitely different colors, right? Right. The fedora that Oscar Wallace is wearing is a little bit more like, I don't know, it's kind of like a little Indiana Jonesy, to be honest. It's kind of that shape. It's not the color, but it has a little bit more of that Western look. And Elliot Ness's character wears kind of a Indiana Jones style fedora. Not here. This is more of a traditional, right? But the other thing I want to point out, well, besides obviously, Jim Malone's flat cap, right? That's a very iconic look. You guys already know I do love me a flat cap, right? Sean Connery wears it really well. But the other thing I wanted to point out here about Elliot Ness is how he's wearing his hat, right? You know where I'm going with this, right? How is Elliot Ness wearing the hat? And again, this is not something that was invented by Frank Sinatra, but Frank Sinatra was synonymous with this style, right? He's wearing the hat right at the back of his skull, right? You know what I'm talking about. I call it the Frank Sinatra, right? Somebody else may call it something else. I call it Frank, right? Because Sinatra was notorious. Like, he made that look iconic, right? But with his trilby, right? Not with a standard fedora, with a trilby type style hat, right? And that's when it kind of like I said, this is even though I don't wear it with the lid down, this is kind of like my Frank Sinatra hat, my Knox Tom and Jerry. I love this hat, man. I love this hat. This is so me, I think other than brim binding, the only thing I would have on this hat that might make it, but I don't want to ruin this look ever to add brim binding, because I love this hat the way it is, right? This is my Frank Sinatra style. Shout out to Kevin Gerber for selling me this hat. Kevin gave me a great deal on this hat. It was beat up already a little bit. Kevin cleaned it up for me. There's still like a big, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a stain or whatnot. I can see like all the imperfections, and I still love it. Makes me love this hat more. It actually has like a cigarette hole. Like, there's like some kind of cigarette hole burn in this hat that I'm like, holy shit, like that like I said, I'm sorry for keep cursing here, but maybe it's the medication. Yeah, this hat is strokes. I love this hat. I love it. And it goes really good with that leather jacket. So shout out to Dan. You gave me the perfect leather jacket, for this hat. And I really appreciate it. Anyway, I'll go on. But yeah, I'm just pointing out things in the stills, right? As you watch the movie, you guys know the format. I just point things out that like jump out at me. And we don't need to like keep belaboring this. Like, we're gonna run out of time here eventually, but I'm just gonna try to keep scrolling through some of these. And you guys, right? You guys at home, right? As you watch this later on, right? Or maybe you're not watching this live, you can kind of like see all the various colors here because they're very beautiful, right? Elliot Ness's character changes hats at least a few times in this movie. I see a lot of different hats, right? They're different colors, different shapes. They're all beautiful, right? This same hat, I believe, Oscar here up front, and this is like a pivotal scene here, right? Right, more foreshadowing, right? When they're looking at the books, this is kind of the sting operation they did on the Canadian border, where they trapped some of Al Capone's men, and they trapped this guy who was one of Al Capone's guys, and he happens to be carrying a ledger, right? So that's what they're looking at in this book, in this scene, and it's just really like more foreshadowing. I'm like, all right, this is like, it's screaming, it's like punching right? David Mamet did not, like, this was no accident, right? David Mamet was showing, like, listen, the point here is that the answer is staring you in the face, bro, right? Or gal, right? Or sister, right? The answer is right in front of your face. Just do it, right? But again, at this point, Elliot Ness, he's interested, right? He's like, that's interesting, but this guy's a murderer. I don't want to get him on tax evasion. I want to get him on murder because that's what he is. You know, I'm going to take this guy down again, my way, even though the right way, ultimately the right way, it keeps coming back in his face. You know, and Oscar keeps pointing it out. But, you know, even Sean Connery here is like, really, bro? Like, I didn't sign up for tax evasion, right? Like, I'm this like coward, right? So Sean Connery is a very, like, he's a scared dad. Like, he's a tough guy, but he's also a scared guy because he knows who he's going up against, right? He's wise enough to know, and he's sitting there like, no, we can't get this guy for tax evasion. He's a bad dude, right? Anyway, so yeah. And I wanted to make sure, like, I included this photo here because, and again, remember what we're looking at. We're looking at crew shots, right? These are the crew, right? You're looking at, right? You don't see George Stone in this shot because George Stone is in the corner. In this scene, George Stone is in the corner out looking out the window. You know, actually, what he was earlier in the scene, he was looking out the window with a Tommy gun. Love that scene because he's like nervous, right? He's a young kid, right? Andy Garcia's character, George Stone, Giuseppe Pietri. He is a young kid that's just seeing his first action, and he knows he's going against Al Capone. He's signing up for a kind of essentially a death wish, right? So he's nervous, and all he can keep doing is, like, he can always keep messing and fiddling, right? He's like doing like that ADHD, that, right? It's kind of like where he's fiddling, the fidgeting, right? He's doing that, but with a Tommy gun. I just think it's pretty funny, right? Who knows? Maybe David Mamet like intentionally wrote ADHD into the role. Again, I'm projecting. Sorry, but I do that sometimes. Anyway, this, for a lot of people, this might have well been the movie poster or the one that they should have released, right? Because everybody know, like I said, just like when you watch The Dark Knight Rises, right? You're like, yeah, the poster should be Bane and then Batman at the bottom, right? This is how some people view The Untouchables. They view Al Capone character, Robert De Niro, as the leading guy, and then 4 other guys who were trying to chase him, right? Right? Again, iconic. That just goes to show you the villain status, the iconic villain status of Al Capone, right? And again, he was a real guy, right? Maybe he wasn't as interesting as this movie portrays him. I happen to know that he's at least the style is right. Look at that hat tilt, right? That's a snazzy dresser, regardless of the fact that he's a murderer, right? He's a murderer, but the man could dress. You know, they nailed it, right? And obviously De Niro, like, De Niro didn't sign up not to nail it, right? He knows Al Capone. He knows the largesse of that character, right? So De Niro did what De Niro does, right? He pours himself into the role, and he pretty much transformed himself into Al Capone. Again, I can't tell you that. I didn't know Al Capone, you know? A lot of people aren't alive, you know, to have known Al Capone personally, right? That's kind of like, now it's up to like the nerds to dig that up, you know, in terms of like what's out there on Al Capone, right? In terms of like who the real man was, right? Besides what we all know and what he did, right? And all the things that he did, but how was he as a father, right? How was he as a husband, right? You know, you get some of those facets, and I think in the show Boardwalk Empire, right? Al Capone is a character in Boardwalk Empire, which is based off in Atlantic City, right? So it goes to show you Al Capone dealing with New Jersey because, well, Al Capone is a Northeasterner, right? He's not from Chicago. He went out to Chicago, ran things, but he is a New Yorker. He's a Brooklyn boy. And that includes the tri-state area, right? Meaning he's out there doing business because he knows, like, all right, I'm running things in Chicago. I'm going to do business with the guys back home because, well, I got to, right? You make, even as a ruthless, cutthroat gangster, they know the value of cooperation, right? So he was out there dealing with Enoch, right? That's Steve Buscemi's character in Boardwalk Empire, right? That again, I don't know how true everything in Boardwalk Empire is. I do know that Chicago had a really wide grasp, and Chicago, when they're met up with the guys from the guys from New York, right? The five families, right? They met up with the guys from Philly, right? Philadelphia, the Philadelphia organized crime, they ran Atlantic City, right? They controlled Atlantic City for a long time. But we're talking about before that time, in the time of Prohibition, you had Steve Buscemi's character, Enoch. I forget his last name, but and I'm probably saying his first name wrong. It's been a little bit since I seen that show. But Steve Buscemi killed that character. Great hats in that movie, by the way, especially Homburgs. You got great fedoras and great Homburgs in the movie, in the TV show Boardwalk Empire. I recommend it. Anyway, just wanted to cover that. And then again, we're still talking about this is more crew shots, right? You're looking at them like, this is my badass crew right here, And again, some great hats, So I'm just gonna keep doing this. Again, now this is a different type of poster, right? Kind of, this is kind of like duality, right, of the two characters. Elliot Ness does not wear a hat in this poster, but you still got Al Capone in his hat, right? Again, the reason why there's no mystery as to why Al Capone keeps showing up with a hat in all the movie posters, because that's how we, as the viewer, remember him, right? The guy that wore a hat and you didn't want to cross. So again, more crew shots, right? Just to give you guys, right, and like a little bit different angles of these hats, right? And I keep going back to Oscar Wallace's hat. I really think that it was an underrated hat, right? Like, he's a very slight man, and the brim size is really long, right? For a guy that of his stature, right? Like, like the idea of, right, again, and we got Josh here, who's a hatter. We have other hatters that are part of this channel. But in terms of like brim, like there's certain brim sizes that you cannot pull off decently if you're like somebody small of stature, right? Like, I happen to have very narrow shoulders, right? I don't have like the big honking shoulders that some guys do, like that guy that I bought that jacket from. He was like a perfect triangle, right? He was like an athletic guy. I don't know what he did if he played sports, but he looked like he was a I don't know, like a wide receiver or a tight end, like somebody like really athletic, cornerback maybe, like really athletic, not like a lineman, right? He's not built like a 300-pound lineman, but like he could have been a quarterback. That's what it is. He might have been a starting quarterback, right? I didn't ask him that. I didn't want to like get into that, but like, you know what I mean? Like, some guys will probably have a little problem with somebody else like talking about their physique. It was like, I don't know. It just dawned, like, it just shot at me because I'm looking at this. Okay, I'm buying his jacket. And then I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to buy this jacket. Like, there's no way that we're going to wear the same jacket. But the reason why it worked out is because his wife said, your jacket's too big for you, hon. You need a slimmer jacket. You have an athletic build, and I'm like, your wife is right, and obviously it helped me buy the jacket, right? So I'm like sitting there, I'm like, all right, I'm no dummy, right? I wanted the jacket. Like, I saw it. I'm like, that's the reason why I went and I met up with them. I want to check out this jacket, and I wanted to buy it. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Your wife is right. That jacket's not for you. It's for me. Anyway, shout out to them. That they were really nice. Yeah. Ian says they had to be incorruptible, something rare in the police back then. And that's, great comment, Ian, because that's covered, right? That's covered in this movie. And that's what made the Untouchables such a incredible, right? An incredible crew, right? Because Capone's like, what am I going to do? I'm like, I'm greasing every cop, including the chief of police. Why am I getting trouble from these guys? And he knows it's because of Elliot Ness, because Elliot Ness is a leader, right? Elliot Ness's character canonized this group, right? And motivated them, right? He got Jim Malone, who he really respected, off of the street in his cushy street job, right? He could have done that and been and retired, had a nice little police pension, and lived on with his life in his merry way. But Elliot Ness brought out that fire, right? So he's like, all right, like they complement each other really well, right? Again, it's like very a father-son relationship, right? And you guys already see, right? Why am I saying this? Well, because Luke thinks the world of his dad, right? Right. I am both a dad and a son, and my, obviously on my, I have my own son, right? So there's that chain, right? And I respect that chain, that evolution of chain. And I see that. I can't help but notice that in movies, right? And I'm pretty sure it's no accident, right? Even though I'm maybe projecting, I feel like David Mamet made this character, these two characters have that father-son relationship for a reason. I just think too highly of David Mamet not to think so. This is kind of an alternative kind of movie poster. I don't know if I've ever seen this before up until like today. I just thought it was pretty interesting, to be honest, right? So it's like, you can already see right here, like this is something that would never make it out, right? Only because of what's going on right here, right? Besides the fact that there's an actual gun here, right? This is Elliot Ness here. This is a kind of a caricature. I don't know if somebody drew this, but it's really interesting. And then an iconic scene here at the bottom, a bloody, a guy with a bloody, he just got baseball batted, right? This is probably the most gruesome scene in the movie, and it happens fairly early on, right? Right at the very beginning, you see a very diplomatic Al Capone, because he's got no worries, right? At this point, he runs to Chicago. Everybody knows not to cross Al Capone, and so he's sitting on Easy Street, right? He's like, oh, I got this on lock. But then when you start seeing the downfall of Al Capone, you start noticing that he becomes less trustworthy, right? So what Elliot Ness did to Al Capone was that he shook his confidence, right? And you guys all know what happens to a guy when they lose their confidence, right? It's that starts their downfall, right? Right? Like if you know, right, there's certain days you might feel a little less confident in wearing your hat, right? It happens, right? You go out there like, no, I don't feel like putting myself out there, right? It's just not one of those days, right? I don't want people looking at me. I don't want this, right? So and Jimmy Carter had like a really great speech about this. If you look up Jimmy Carter, right? President Jimmy Carter, I think it was in 1976 or something around that time, or 78. He put out a very famous speech. And again, Jimmy Carter was probably one of the presidents that became more famous after he became president, right? That's like, for a lot of presidents, the peak is when they're president, right? Jimmy Carter's arc, that's what makes him such an interesting politician, is that he became more famous and more well-known after he was president. He was almost like a nothing burger type president, if you could have such a thing, right? Right. In the grand history of all the presidents, Jimmy Carter's administration, I feel like kind of there's a little kind of pales, right? And there's a lot of good reasons for that I won't get into. But he had this great speech, and I have this saved. I believe the name of it is called "The Crisis of Confidence." Right. So shout out to Jimmy Carter. I think we recently lost Jimmy Carter, but really iconic politician, really iconic man, and lived a pretty long life. His story, he was still writing his story even after he became, the most powerful man in the world, right? That's basically what you are if you're the president. Anyway, so I won't belabor that too much because this is not about Jimmy Carter. So more crew shots. Again, hopefully this is coming across on screen. So yeah, let me make sure that I'm keeping an eye on your comments without like losing. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, I won't keep belaboring this. There's more crew shots. This is an iconic, right? This scene, I talked about it, right? This is the scene, right, where Sean Connery, this is at one time where you don't see him with a flat cap on, right? This is when he's still working the beat. And this is how Elliot Ness and him meet each other. And that's when Elliot Ness, like he's at a low point, right? Elliot Ness just failed at busting Al Capone, right? And catching one of his, like busting up a ring. So he's feeling really low. He's out there. And then he starts like throwing out paperwork. And Sean Connery is like, hey, buddy, stop throwing out paper. And he's kind of like, who is this guy? Right. And then essentially they had this conversation and he's kind of like, hey, I like this guy. Right. So this is kind of a pivotal scene. And also in this particular still, you can see that crown. Right. Right. This is right. Elliot Ness from behind. You can see that nice teardrop shape. It looks like a teardrop to me. Beautiful teardrop shaped crown on the fedora that Elliot Ness is wearing. So, I won't, I got a lot of photos. I won't pause too long here. You can see that also, that teardrop shape here. Right. Really, this is right when they're going to make their very first bust, right? Their very first successful bust of Al Capone's operations. And this is a pivotal scene because Sean Connery himself, he stops before they even open that door. He stops almost as kind of like he does it. He says it's for Elliot Ness, but it really is also for himself, right? He knows what's going to happen. He says, and he verbalizes, this is perfect. Once we open this door, we can never go back, right? Like, you'll never undo. You can't put this genie back in the bottle once we bust into this door, right? Like, realize that. Like, this is your last chance, right? We could walk away and maybe we'll live. So that's really pivotal, right? It creates really great tension. And again, you got right behind them, you got George Stone, Giuseppe, right? And you got Oscar here. They're ready, but they're scared to death, right? They're scared to death about what's going to happen, right? Like they signed up for it. They're excited. They're down with the mission, but at the same time, they're scared. Everybody here is scared. I think the only one that's not as scared right here, and he's only not letting it on, is Elliot Ness, right? Even Jim Malone is scared right now. And that goes to show you how powerful, like I said, the character, right? This is kind of the front of Oscar Wallace's fedora. You can see how oversized it is for his face, right? It's very Indiana Jones, right? The Indy hat, right? This is based in 1930s, right? Prohibition era, right? There's no such thing as Indiana Jones, as far as I know, right? Right? There's no Harrison Ford, but before, well, actually, you know what? Harrison Ford, for this movie, they might have taken some right? Because the Indiana Jones films existed in right? They came out before this. So maybe, just maybe, this was kind of a nod to Indiana Jones within Untouchables, to be honest. I didn't even think about that. But this could be the costume designer. What did I call her? Just trying to remember. Marilyn Van Straker. She was the one that was running the costume show here. Maybe she saw Indiana Jones. I was like, okay, we're gonna have an Indy hat in here. You guys let me know if you agree. I feel like Oscar's hat is really very Indy, right? It might not be the same color, but I got Indiana Jones vibes. But this gentleman is not built like Harrison Ford, right? He is no Han Solo. He is a very slight man, a nerd, right? He very small statured. But I still think he pulls off this hat. It goes to show you, right? If you're out there and you're a smaller guy and you're scared about wearing a big hat, like, just look at this guy. Look at Oscar Wallace. That should give you a little oomph about how you could pull this off. I think he does it really well, right? Remember, this is also besides Elliot Ness, this is kind of like the ascension of Giuseppe as well as Oscar. But Oscar, unfortunately, doesn't make it all the way through, right? We lost out of the crew of 4, half of them got cut down, right? So it goes to show you, if you want to make an omelet, they're gonna get some eggs broken, and nobody was surprised, right? The viewer is not surprised that there's gonna be collateral damage. This is probably that same scene, right? But just a little bit more zoomed out, and you can see that, how big, like how tall that crown looks on Oscar Wallace's head, right? Again, because he has like a very round, and also like because his face is like kind of very round, I don't know, it feels like it exacerbates the tallness of the crown. So I just want to point that out for, because I know our hat nerds are probably looking at that kind of stuff like, oh man, that's interesting, yeah, let's just keep going here. This is kind of that log cabin scene, right? They're in the Canadian border. This is another crew shot here, right? So what we're not seeing here, they're all looking out the window waiting for Al Capone's crew to show up, right? So they can go bust him. And everybody's nervous. Everybody's nervous, right? Including George. George has the most nervous energy, and it's so good because you could tell, right? He's giving you the vibe that he's not necessarily like a scaredy cat, right? He's just respectful. He knows the gravity of the situation and all he can do, right? So George Stone is on the corner here, fidgeting with his Tommy gun. Jim Malone, Sean Connery's character, all he's doing, he's going to everybody, trying to calm them down, right? He's like, I'm staying calm by calming you guys down and giving you advice, fatherly advice, right? So he's essentially treating this whole crew like his own sons, right? And he doesn't want to see them hurt, right? That's that paternal wisdom that Jim Malone's character exudes throughout this movie, and it's what endears himself to the audience. Man, I love it. Shout out to David Mamet for like, I don't know. Again, I don't know how much of this was a David Mamet thing versus Brian De Palma, but it's beautifully done. Again, we see these two, right, in throughout the movie. The flat cap, these are like the dynamic duo. This is the father and son duo here going to action. It's kind of like, I'm not going anywhere without my dad, right? That's just what it is. Same thing here. He's like, my dad's right behind me. Again, that's what I think when I see this. Shout out to my dad. Shout out to your dads. Regardless of whether they're still here or not. Anybody that sees this kind of relationship, they know. If you know, right? This is that same scene when they go and he's Jim Malone is intimidating Al Capone's guy. They already caught him. They busted Al Capone's crew at the Canadian border, and he's trying to play good cop, bad cop with him, right? He does a great job. Again, another performance by Jim Malone in front of Elliot, right? To say, this is why I'm valuable, right? Like he plays this good cop, bad cop role to a T, right? And there's a really classic one-liner at the end of this scene, this end of right, where the Mountie, the Canadian Mountie, says, "I do not approve of the methods you just employed," right? And then Elliot has a classic delivery. He goes, "Well, you guys are not from Chicago, right?" And I'm like, that's, yeah. Right? You don't have to be from Chicago to know what that's about. It's like, we do it. We have to match. Capone's ruthlessness, right? Like, meaning his ability to take it to the next step, right? Because that's what Jim Malone kept advising him. Listen, if we do this, we're talking about a guy that's not like, he has no problem with killing you and killing your entire family, right? In front of you, right? He'll kill your family in front of you and then kill you, right? Just to make you suffer. Like, this is the level of ruthlessness that we're dealing with, right? Essentially, we're essentially trying to kill the devil himself, right? That's what Jim keeps telling him. And this is the nice thing, is that line, besides being a great one-liner, it was Elliot speaking to everybody, to the entire crew, especially his father figure, Jim, that he now is on board. He's willing to do whatever it takes to get this guy. It's a beautiful storytelling. Another crew shot here. Again, I just call these like gratuitous crew shots, right? Like the badassery of this crew, and they sharp, right? Again, remember Giorgio Armani, right? They provided the wardrobe for this. It's just beautiful. Look at that jacket that Giuseppe's wearing, right? George Stone, beautiful. It looks like a suede in this thing, but just gorgeous outfit. Connery's character is wearing like a tweed outfit, like it just, or wool. It could be wool. But wool or tweed, but it's just beautiful, man. You got like, there, you know why people love these movies, besides the fact that they love a good gangster movie. It's just the dress, right? The outfits, right? This is another shot, right? Again, this is probably not from the movie. This is probably from like how we take these shots so that we can sell this movie. So I won't belabor this. A lot of these pictures probably I should have cut out, to be honest. So I'll just keep going them through. Again, you get to see that flat cap. You guys can pause when you guys watch this syndication. You can pause so you can see these shots, right? And just drink it in as a hat nerd, right? Drink it all in. Look at this. Again, you keep saying that this is like when I talked about that line. This seems like it happens right before Elliot Ness delivers that line. Well, maybe you're not from Chicago, right? Because they're listening to the Mountie, like kind of like show his disapproval over their methods. But you can see it, right? Sean Connery's, if Elliot Ness did not say something, right? If his character did not say anything, then you know that Jim Malone would have said something along the lines like, well, you don't know what you got. You don't know what we're up against, right? If you were from my hood, our hood, right? If you knew who we're dealing with, right? Like truly knew, and you weren't up in the in Canada, on your high horse, right? Yeah, you see what I did there? Your high horse, Mountie. If you weren't up on your high horse, you would know that we have to go this far to deal with this guy. So, yeah, I'll just keep going. Let's see. Again, same kind of scene. Again, I'm not doing this because it's gonna move the story along. I'm doing this so you guys can get different angles of these hats, right? So I won't stay stuck on here. I'll move here. This is that training scene. Again, really iconic scene. This is again, look at the body language here, right? This is very much where Jim Malone playing the drill sergeant, right? Again, if this was organized crime, Elliot Ness would be the boss, but Jim Malone would be the consigliere, right? He would be either the underboss or the consigliere, like somebody, the right-hand man, right? The guy that's giving counseling to the boss, right? And just beautiful, right? And he's like, all right, I'm going to show you how to recruit. This is how you recruit, right? This is a father showing his son how to do his job, right? He's like, hey, son, I've been doing this long, right? I got shirts older than you, right? You know what I'm talking about. Everybody that's got a dad or has a granddad, right? That's interacted with older folks. You get those guys, right? Because it's like, hey, man, I've been around the block. Like, you better respect me, right? And you can see here that body language, right? Right now, it's Elliot Ness taking notes from dad, right? Of how to get this done. Yeah, Jim is like the NCO. Yeah, exactly. Jim is again. You don't need to know anything about police work. You don't need to know anything to know that Jim is a guy, and that's the beautiful part about Sean Connery and the level of artistry, right? Obviously, Sean Connery everybody knows him from James Bond. Sean Connery did a great movie that I think is really underrated. It's called Finding Forrester, and he plays a recluse. Right, he's a literary recluse, right, which is like an age-old story, right, of the literary recluse. But Sean Connery really adds a lot of depth. And again, it's a father-son tale, right? It's not a hat movie, even though there are hats in the movie, or at least a hat, because Sean Connery, I think, because he was a balding man, I feel like Sean Connery kind of like always insisted. I don't know. My guess is that Sean Connery became a hat person as his hair, right? Like a lot of guys, right? When their hair thins, right? Like they follically challenge, as Paul likes to say. It feels like because of the characters that I see Sean Connery play, tended to go either one, they wore a hat, or two, Sean Connery wore either a headpiece, right, or some sort of covering to kind of give his character a little bit more of a different look. But yeah, that etiquette: never reveal the inside of your hat in public because it is seen as rude. Wow. Yeah, interesting. I've heard this, Ian. I've never really took it as canon. Thanks for sharing that, Ian. I did not know that. And you know where I'm going to go with this. I'm going to go to Kennedy, right? Because, well, if we all kind of know, right? I had this conversation with Steve. I've had it here with you guys ad nauseum. Basically the story of Kennedy. Kennedy was not a hat guy. Kennedy wore a top hat to his inauguration, right? But he wasn't a hat guy. He did not like it. So a lot of the photos that you see of Kennedy in his inauguration, you see the top hat, right? Which was created for him by John Kavanaugh, right? Kavanaugh won the contract to create the top hat for Kennedy for his inauguration. And besides that, right? Besides the fact that you saw Kennedy like, all right, do I have to wear this? Okay, I'm going to wear it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because I'm the president, right? I'm going to pay homage, and I'm going to do it the right thing. But as soon as I can, I'm going to leave the hat right there. But he always had it around, right? And then that story goes, and again, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea goes, the lore is that John Kavanaugh himself advised Kennedy to show his hat, right? Because you won't know, right? You won't know it's a Kavanaugh until you see the label, right? So Kennedy was advised, according to the canon, right? According to the lore, that Kennedy was advised by John Kavanaugh himself, right? Remember, John Kavanaugh at this point he's big hat, right? He's basically a Elon Musk, a Jeff Bezos, a Warren Buffett. He's a titan of industry because Big Hat is still like it's on the downfall, but he's still got some sway, right? Right. And John Kavanaugh, who's on my Mount Rushmore, to be honest, right? I mentioned this before. John Kavanaugh is like number 4 in my Mount Rushmore. You got Zadok Benedict, Ezra Mallory Sr., John B. Stetson, and John Kavanaugh for me, right? Whatever you want to say about Knox, right? And Dobbs, I think that they're worthy. But again, my personal Mount Rushmore of U.S. hats icons would be that. So John Kavanaugh is that last guy, and no less important, right? He did a lot of things, the Kavanaugh edge, right? That we all not kind of love as vintage hat nerds. But at this point in time, 1960, Hat Corporation of America is on the down, on the way out, right? So John Kavanaugh is a man that's like built an empire, and he's trying to secure his empire. So he's begging John F. Kennedy, Jack Kennedy, depending on how you but he's begging. I was like, man, I made this hat for you. I know you're not a hat guy, right? But please, if you go out there, right, and you have photos of Kennedy doing that, right? He's meeting with world leaders. He's not wearing the hat, but he's holding in the hand, kind of in a way similar here to how Elliot Ness is holding his hat, right? And again, except in this thing, it might have just been, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I never tried actually zooming in, to be honest. Let's see here. What did I do here? Just want to make sure that, because this might not be high quality enough for me to zoom in on. I just noticed this detail. I'm like, oh, this is a chance to see what this hat looks like. But you can see this photo is not high resolution enough for me to see what kind of hat this might be. It kind of honestly looks like a Dobbs. I kind of see a stagecoach if you ask me. And everybody knows the Dobbs stagecoach, right? I don't know. Somebody else with more, with better eyes, a better shot of this can at least see and maybe confirm or deny that this is a Dobbs. It looks like a Dobbs to me. Kind of like a French Connection, right? The pork pie. I'm still gonna say that's a Dobbs. It could be a Knox, but I'm thinking it's a Dobbs. Either way, it's Hat Corporation of America, right? So shout out to John Kavanaugh. Anyway, again, another crew shot. Look at the angles and everything, man. I just love this. And this lighting it's got like the lighting has like a little pink hue here. I don't remember this scene in particular, but I think it's really cool. I think the hat's really, man, this is what a great hat movie. What a great movie, period. The continuity people often mistakes due to ignorance. Yeah. Agreed. Again, ignorance pervades, right? Again, even myself, like I said, at least for myself, I just like, and then you guys know, I'm pretty self-effacing. I try to just make sure people know it's like, hey, listen, whatever I'm saying here is, it may not be right. I'm just a guy, I love it. It's like, this is kind of like a interesting lighting here, right? The light's kind of like shining in the face, but you still get a good shot of that crown dent, right? So I just want to give people angles of the hats, right? Because they are iconic. Again, I don't remember this. Actually, I think I do remember this scene, I believe. But yeah, it's pretty good shot of this hat. This is kind of like more of like the bigger brim, right? On Elliot Ness, you can see that, right? From this is kind of like a shot shooting up, right? Kind of like, I don't know what that's called. I know bird's eyes from the top. The shot coming up, I don't remember what that's called, but it's looking up. It makes Elliot Ness appear bigger than life, right? And then it makes that hat brim, really stand out, right? If you watch Star Trek, this Indiana Jones style of hat. If you watch Star Trek and you watch which is the version? Deep Space Nine, right? If you watch Deep Space Nine, you know there's a character called Quark, and Quark is a Ferengi, right? So that the indie style hat with the bigger brim and that thing, it kind of reminds me of a Ferengi's ears, right? Shout out to Star Trek and my fellow Star Trek nerds out there. Yeah, Ian says walking sticks are nearly always carried in the wrong hand, for example. Interesting. Yeah. That's an interesting tidbit. Okay. Yeah. Ian, man, I love your knowledge, Ian. Thanks for sharing that. I'll have to kind of find out about that. I'm not aware. Uh, um, but again, this is why I do this show. Like I do this with other nerds, right? And we're gonna collectively share the knowledge. And then you guys, the viewer, right? Even if you're not participating, you get to benefit from some of the knowledge here. This is kind of a classic shot, right? So besides the overcoat, right, really sharp. This is kind of like this is pretty much the still that describes the failure, right? That Elliot Ness underwent, right? Before he built his crew of Untouchables, he had this major failure, and then the press was there to capture it, which is like the ultimate insult, right? Ian says you must use the opposite hand to the weak leg. All right, that makes perfect sense. Gosh, Ian, that's like, you know what I mean? Like when I hear that, I'm like, yeah, duh, of course. I didn't know that. You know what I mean? Like I said, that you don't know what you don't know, right? But that makes perfect sense. Oh my gosh, Ian, thank you. Again, Ian also has a heart of a teacher. I love it. Again, this is not like any kind of mind-blowing scene. This is just a still to kind of capture, right? This is a family man, right? And even Jim points this out, right? When Elliot Ness is assembling his crew, he says, "I don't want any family men." And then Jim points out the hypocrisy, right? Because he says, "Elliot, you have a family." You know what I mean? Like Jim is concerned by that, right? Jim is like, this is kind of like my son. I don't want my son dying, right? Right? I don't want my son to go down. So he's like, listen, you got a family. Like, didn't you hear what I explained? We're trying to go after the devil himself. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, if anything, step aside, let me die, right? George is already setting himself up as a martyr here for the crew. And you kind of know where this goes, right? This is also a really cool shot, man. You know what I mean? Like again, this scene is in the scene. Like everybody knows this scene. It's like before a lot of stuff goes down, right? The infamous step scene, right? But look at what a great silhouette, right? Elliot Ness is casting here, man. It's just like gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. The cinematography here is just, just the ward, and it's not necessarily the cinematography as much as the wardrobe. I think the wardrobe is what always gets me with this movie, and I think I might have got the same. This was just the same photo, so here I got duplicate photo here. Just one looks darker, so I'll just keep going. But again, really iconic silhouette here, right? He's like an action shot. He's just firing off his shotgun. He saves the baby, right? Right. This is the kind of Elliot Ness being the superhero, right? Because he's the family man. He knows that could be easily have been his daughter, in that carriage. He's just got his wife just had a baby. Like this is a guy that really, he's a good guy, right? And look at this. This is pretty badass, right? Like Elliot Ness's character is pretty badass, right? The only reason why he pales in this movie is only because Capone is such a badass character, as well as Jim Malone, right? So you got Capone and Malone, right? Italian and Irish, right? And you got that dynamic there, right? The Italians and Irish, that's another thing about in terms of kinship, right? Right. With the Irish, we're talking about New York, right? Like, come on now, you know where this is going in terms of my arc, the characters that I've come across in New York and also outside of New York, right? In terms of that, you watch a movie like Departed, right? You watch a lot of movies that are Irish and Italian. It's kind of like they're two scrappy upbringings, and obviously you got the Puerto Ricans and Dominicans that came about, right? West Side Story, right? The gangs, right? When New York and Chicago were getting flooded with Puerto Ricans coming from the island, right? Like it or not, that the same old story happens, right? Like history repeats itself, right? If it doesn't repeat itself, it often rhymes, right? The reason why there's kind of that kinship between Italians, Irish, and just basically everybody, because essentially, that when you have a new immigrant population, they are kind of the lowest of the low. They're exploited, right? They are the source of cheap labor, right? We had a lot of our railroads were built by the Chinese, right? There's history there. Don't ignore the history. It doesn't mean that we have to kind of celebrate it in that, oh wow, what a great thing, that we had all this exploitation. That's not the reason why we learn these things. We learn them so that we're able to identify the similarities that are happening now, or might happen tomorrow or next year or the year after that, and that we can put a stop to it, right? That's why God, is like, well, anyway, I'm not going to say, but that's why we have frontal lobes, right? Right? The whole part, right? If you look at the brain and how it's composed, the frontal lobe is in charge of what? Forethought, right? The ability to project yourself into the future, right? It's why we have evolved to the point where we're able to predict things, right? We're able to come up with right? We're not beating each other up, right? I don't go and I don't step into a room. I see another guy and I punch him in the face and then take what he's got and then take his girl, right? That's why I don't do that, because I have a frontal lobe. I know there are consequences of doing that, that's why. And sometimes there are deficiencies in frontal lobes, right? Brains are like bodies, right? They're part of our body, right? And they are in charge, and everybody's brain is different, right? And then a lot of our jail cells are filled with a lot of youth, right? Because we know that regardless of the health of the human brain, we know that as the brain is developing, the frontal cortex is probably the part that is the later part to develop. That's why you got young kids, right, that grow up in gangs, right? Right? They don't have that frontal cortex, and they get manipulated by older gang members, right? And I hate that because I don't really like that part of our human existence, but it plays itself out, right? And then that story of the reformed gangster, right? The guy, that gangster spends, they go to jail because they committed murder, right? They spend 20, 30, 40 years in jail. Then they come out, they're already an old man, and they go and they reject that. And then they're like, oh man, I threw away my life when I was just, and then they want to go and speak to the youth, right? They want to right that wrong. And I think that's beautiful, right? Because essentially they did kind of in a way throw a lot of their good years out. But when they come out, and instead of going and doing other like nonsense, because they're like, oh, I lived my life, right? They're like, there's some beautiful stories out there of people that have like, they lost their way, right? They fell victim to what I just described. They come out and then they use their platform. They create a platform to speak to other youth because they know that the cycle has to stop. The cycle has to stop, right? And doesn't mean that they're going to save the world, right? All they want to do is save one kid. Isn't that beautiful, right? Just to save one kid. If you have that as your legacy, where you go and you stop one kid from falling victim and repeating your same mistakes, right? Because maybe they don't have a father figure or a mother figure, or even an uncle or aunt or grandma or granddad, right? Like, that's beautiful, man. It's like that's worth it, right? Anyway, I won't get in that soapbox because I could go on and on. Again, I'll keep going through silhouettes here. Again, I think we beat up Elliot Ness and his silhouettes. I'm just going to keep scrolling here. But none of these are like, they're all gorgeous to me, and then obviously some of the silhouettes for Jim Malone's character, man, that flat cap, right? This is kind of a newsboy hat. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is a newsboy hat that Sean Connery character Jim Malone's wearing, and he wears it so well, man. It's just really sharp. And then his whole outfit, man. Shout out to Giorgio Armani and the entire crew, right? We had Marilyn Van Straker, and we also had who else here? Let me make sure that Van Straker and Richard Bruno, right? Interesting is that I'm looking at some of the things here. Purportedly, some of the hats that were used in this film allegedly were supplied by Baron Hats, right? He's a Hollywood hat maker, and also Gary White. I believe Gary White's based out of Buffalo. Again, I don't know how true this is, but that's something that we can kind of uncover later on. Who knows? Maybe I think Gary White is still alive and well. I believe Baron Haas is still in existence. Maybe somebody that watches this knows those gentlemen, assuming they're still alive, and can find out. Because if we don't find out whether they're still alive, then we're gonna have to figure it out later on. So anyway, I will move on. Let's see. Let me make sure. Okay, I already covered that. And let's see. I mean, here goes. Come on. Look at this silhouette with a Tommy gun, right? I believe this is a Tommy gun. I'm pretty sure this is they're on horseback. This is in the Canadian border. Again, this is an empowered Jim Malone, meaning business, Again, this is part of that nervous energy. This is when he's going over to George Stone and telling, hey, you checked that gun 100 times already. Stop it. You're like, he's doing it because George Stone, Giuseppe, is making him nervous, right? By fidgeting. I just thought that was beautiful. This is another kind of another angle of that shot with Jim Malone. This is kind of like him being bad cop, right? This is like when he goes and he picks up the dead body, right? He's trying to scare the other guy. This guy's already dead, right? The guy with the gun in his mouth is already dead. Jim Malone decides that he's going to use this dead guy as a prop to be able to get a confession, get cooperation out of the out of the gentleman that's alive inside with the rest of the crew. I just thought it was brilliant, just really brilliant. I don't know if any of this ever happened, right? Doesn't matter. It's beautiful cinema, right? And here's kind of an angle here of somebody with their. I don't know who this is actually. This might be Frank Nitti, to be honest. Frank Nitti is a character in this movie, but we'll show him a little bit later. He's kind of a fringe character, but still interesting character. So you can see here the reason why all this is happening is now they got the Untouchables got on Capone's radar, and now Capone's really pissed off. But it's because why? Well, Al Capone's scared, right? Even though he doesn't look it right in the movie, the reason why the Untouchables got on the attention and got the response that they got from Al Capone because Al Capone's scared. He sees the Untouchables as a legitimate threat, right? He's like, these guys there, you know what I mean? It's kind of like somebody from somebody opposing a dictator, right? They're like, wait a minute, I got to quell this, right? Because if I don't, I have to make an example. Otherwise, there'll be more people, right? I got to make an example out of them. And this is another iconic scene, I think, for me, of Malone. Remember, part of the reason that Malone's scared is that he knows that his fellow cops are also on the take. And they're trying to, they like Malone. They're like, dude, get out of this. You're going to die. You know what I mean? If Capone says so, we're going to have to kill you. Don't, get out of Dodge, right? And so it goes to, adds to the tension here in the movie. Again, more shots. Again, just giving you some different silhouettes. We're done with Jim Malone. Now we'll go into some shots of Andy Garcia's character. Again, this is George Stone, Giuseppe Pietri, right? An Italian boy from Chicago. He's a street smart kid, but he's also a brand new cop. But also, look at that jacket, man. Look at that jacket. Look at that outfit. It's just gorgeous, man. I mean, Andy Garcia, I think we all wish we could look like Andy Garcia, man. Man, he's got he's just chiseled. He's got that chiseled facial feature. He has kind of that iconic swarthy look, right? Kind of that those dark features. No wonder, like I said, Godfather 3 came I think 3 years later, right? I think it was 1990 that Godfather 3 came out and Andy Garcia was cast. I gotta feel that this role had a lot to had a lot to do with that. Josh says, love, I'm sure he said, love that look. Yeah. It's just sharp, right? Everybody knows kind of the I don't know, there's kind of that feeling out that leather jackets don't go well with fedoras. And I'm just now getting into leather. Morgan is big fan. She just got a leather jacket. I think it's a great look, honestly, to be honest. I think I had that Like I'm somebody I'm a big fan. When it gets colder, I always wore a pea coat, right? And I still wear a pea coat, meaning I have like the shot that I just bought was a gray pea coat, only because I have a black one, I have a navy blue one, I have a casual, like a what do you call it, a camel pea coat, and now I didn't have a gray one, like a gray charcoal, but this one's gray. So I just got myself that shot pea coat. It's just an iconic look. It goes really well, I think, with a fedora, but I think the leather jacket also really goes well, like in a lot of different iterations, right? The bomber, right? It's a heritage style, which I'm all for. Yeah. Yeah. See, I don't know as much. Like, I'm just getting into like the leather jackets and like the appreciation, but a lot of the military inspired leather jackets, right? Depending on what brand, right? Because the U.S. contracted with different brands to build jackets for the forces. But I always loved the bomber style, right? I never had a leather bomber, but I always had like a some sort of bomber style, usually kind of like a fake suede. It was kind of like the jacket that I thought would really look sharp. And this is even before I wore a hat, right? When I just had, my hairstyle was my hat, right? It's just really good. And on the Fedora Lounge, you really get some really good leather jackets. Anyway, we're getting a little long on the show, but I'll just keep going through some of these shots. Again, this is like a suede jacket with this, like, it looks like a fawn hat, like a fawn colored hat on George here. Really good. And then you got that baby. What a cute baby, right? And this is kind of like the arc of George is, well, once Elliot Ness is done, you already can imagine that if there was a part 2, George would be the star, right? He would be the guy that it follows in Elliot Ness's footsteps, right? He's going to be leading the way, but he's going to be representing the Italians to trying to clean up the neighborhood, right? So he's very much a pioneer for his fellow Italians. Josh says heritage style is all about texture: leather, felt, cotton, plaid, linen in the summer. I love it. Josh, that's really well said. I like that. It's just like structured. Man, Josh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, simple but rugged. Exactly. That's like that probably be one of my call signs. My call to action. Luke, simple but rugged, but also mostly simple. Right? It's like, I'm so simple, I'm complex. That's like, getting to another nod to George, to George Carlin, right? Shout out to George Carlin. Look at that jacket, man. That jacket, and then the vest and the tie, everything goes together like it's like seamless. Like you could create a whole fashion line, right? And not that I'm not being cute here, but because Giorgio Armani provided the fashion. I'm not trying to be cute, but because obviously Armani exists. But you could teach a whole class just on the fashion of this movie, man. It really, look at this. This is not from the movie, but this is like from those shots they take to advertise the movie, and they're very glamorous shots. I think Andy Garcia obviously is the closest in this movie that you get to a model, right? And look at this guy. He's got a very form-fitting jacket. It's just really sharp, man. It's just a sharp look. Shout out to Andy Garcia. And then here, finally, we have the fourth member. Obviously, if you watch the movie, you know that Oscar Wallace is the first one to perish. But again, remember I talked about like the Ferengi look. Like, this is another shot that kind of illustrates that. With like this indie style hat, the shape, right? And then the best thing about my favorite thing about Oscar's fedora, besides that it's oversized for his frame and it still looks okay, right? He's a nerd. It's that ribbon. Look at how wide that ribbon is. I'm a big fan of that wide ribbon, right? I think it really enhances, like when you have a really tall crown, that ribbon can really help, visually lower that crown, right? Right? The crown doesn't look as big when you slap a humongous ribbon on it, like a really wide ribbon. So I think that's part of like the optical illusion for Oscar's look. right? He's a slight man, and then with a really big brim, right? The brim, and who knows, and that brim might be normal size, but on his face, it looks really wide. And that ribbon really helps with that, like even out that crown height. So, shout out to the makers, to Marilyn, Bruno, and everybody else, and Armani, for this look. It's another action shot. Again, this is we watched the ascension of Oscar and also his descent. He ultimately perishes. He's the first one to perish, but he's empowered, right? This is a forensic accountant. He's not that kind of cop, right? He's a numbers guy, and I'm a numbers guy, right? I'm the pie guy. So, you can tell how much of a kinship I have with that character. And I also fashioned myself a nerd, It's a nice black and white photo. This is on horseback. This is at the Canadian border. Again, really nice little shot. And again, the outfit, this is a kind of a nerdy guy, but he's getting his taste of real police work. And he feels like he's part of the crew, right? Like he knows what he is. The whole crew knows what he is. He's a nerd, but he's still an important member of the crew, and happened to be the guy that came up with the answer. Anyway, this is kind of like where we're going into like the really iconic. This is the stuff everybody like, oh, this is what I watched the movie for Al Capone, right? Al Capone and his goons. And what more can I say? I mean, there's nothing I can say about Al Capone's outfit that you haven't already heard or you already knew. The guy knew how to dress. He was ruthless, but the man was an iconic and dresser. And you can see that white fedora with the black ribbon, man. And then with that natural hat tilt, right? Like this is a sharp guy. He's got the camel overcoat, right? Over the suit. This is a guy, besides being ruthless, is just stylish as all get out, right? It's like this man walks to a soundtrack, right? That what I'm trying to get at, right? Like that guy needs his own soundtrack, right? And it's something badass, right? Like here comes the badass, right? That's what Al Capone's character screams. Really well done. Shout out to De Niro for pulling this off. Like it's no easy feat, right? When you have a guy as iconic as Al Capone, to try to do him justice, like I know somebody like De Niro knows the level, right? Look at this mug. Look at that. That's De Niro being De Niro, right? Like De Niro's done so many great movies up until this point, and look at that face, man. Like you've angered me, right? It's like you unleash the dog, right? Right? That's like you unleash the dog. You don't even know what's coming for you. Right? I love it. And then like you could see the guys behind him. I'm going to hold them back, like, right? Obviously not too strong, right? You don't want to get clipped. But he's like, oh man, the boss is upset, right? Yeah, that hat, right? Yeah, man. That would be if like said, we got Josh here who's a hatter, right? If you want a hat like your style hat, right? Like, this is the hat that you go out to dinner with. Like if you got, you want to like have the big shot hat, right? Right? There's the big shot, right? We have the Hamburg hat, the black Hamburg hat that's known as the Godfather hat. The Al Capone hat should be this hat, right? This should be the Al Capone hat, right? The white, right? It kind of is like a weird juxtaposition to the character, right? The sinister character, right? It shows you like, I'm going to wear the white hat. Like, I don't need to be Michael Corleone, right? That's what this character is saying. You see Michael Corleone needed that black hat, right? To show that you take him seriously. No, at this point, Al Capone here, he's a guy that his reputation does the talking when he enters the room, right? Like, who Al Capone is. He doesn't need to wear a black hat. He's going to wear something nice because he likes nice hats, right? He's like, nobody F's with me, right? Look at this. Look at that, man. And then obviously De Niro gained a little weight for this role because he's a method actor, right? That's just the way De Niro does it, man. And he just killed it. Like, if you would have told me, like, it's very few things I think Robert De Niro couldn't pull off in his heyday, right? Now that he's a little older, maybe he doesn't have the ability to do, right? His body's not going to be able to allow him to transform like he used to. But man, in his heyday, like we're gonna, like, what more can I say about somebody like De Niro, right? Again, his politics aside, I don't care about his politics, to be honest. He's a great actor. Look at this, man. Look at this. Look at that. You know, like his goons, right? His myrmidons, right? As Ian taught us, right? I say his goons or his henchmen. Ian would say his myrmidons or myrmidons. Myrmidons, that's what it is. Myrmidons. You see, Ian, I pay attention, right? It's like you're an influence, man. You got me hooked on this language. I love language, but when I hear people like Ian who are well read and they drop the words, it becomes part of me. And this is another iconic silhouette. I don't know, honestly, like, to be honest, I couldn't tell you. Like, it looks like this is from the movie, but I just thought it was pretty badass, right? Like, you could make a hat logo out of this, right? You can make a badass hat logo. If you're a hatter and obviously you don't want to get sued, right? But let's say you took this silhouette and you made it into a hat logo, that'd be pretty badass, right? That's my phone. That's my spam. Suspected spam. Don't they know that I'm live streaming? Stop it already. Anyway, sorry about that. But yeah, so I'll just keep going here. This is another character. I believe this is what is his name? His name is what is his name? I think his name is O'Shea, but I could be wrong. What is it? Let's see. Just trying to figure out that guy's name because he had like an iconic hat, and I want to make sure if I can remember who he was. All right, that's okay. His name's announced in the movie, but you kind of seen, right? He's basically Al Capone's messenger boy, right? So once the bust happens, right? That first bust happens. Al Capone sends this gentleman to go to talk to Elliot Ness and tell him, hey, you better stop, right? It's like, I'm sent here to send you a message, right? And he has his hat, it's like really sharp looking hat. He's a Weasley kind of guy, right? Look at him, look at his face. But it's a pretty sinister hat, right? So it's like, this is like, he's coming here in a sinister hat because he's trying to send a sinister message to Elliot Ness and his crew. Like, you better stop. Like, you don't want to keep going where you're going, my friend, right? So Elliot Ness is hearing this from two people, right? He's hearing it from Al Capone's people, right? And he's also hearing it from his own people, right? He's hearing it from Jim Malone, like, hey, stop, right? The world, like like his circles, right? Even his enemies are telling him, hey, you don't want to be doing this. But you know what I mean? Elliot Ness, right? And his infinite like guyness, right? His hard-headedness, his focus, right? We talked about focus with Warren Buffett and with Bill Gates. That's what Elliot Ness represents. He's focused, right? He's focused on getting this guy. And this is kind of like one of the infamous scenes, the shootout scene on the staircase. Again, kind of a little bit a blurry photo, but does show some iconic hats, shows some live action stuff. And here's a shot of Frank Nitti, right? This is Billy Drago playing Frank Nitti, in the movie. Really, this is a Panama hat. This is probably one of the few Panamas that I noticed, from the movie. And it's really, really great, really great Panama. I don't know too much about Panama hats. I do know that's a good one. And this one, this style, what is this called, man? You guys that are my Panama experts, right? With that line, right? This is a style that I saw one just the other day on Facebook. But you know what? That's okay. You guys know what I'm getting at. The guys that know, I'm not a Panama hat expert, but I do know that this style is an iconic Panama hat style, and it looks really sharp, right? Like Billy Drago is very, very slender photo, right? And also, right, what do we see here? This is a lighter colored hat on a bad guy. He's wearing not just a light colored hat, he's a light colored suit. Because again, Frank Nitti, right? People know, don't mess with Frank Nitti, right? You don't mess with that guy. So I thought that was he kind of like was one of those like steal the show kind of characters. And then lastly here, I wanted to show the police, the chief of police here, because he was also, right, obviously he wore a hat, but he wore his uniformed hat. But again, the police were an integral part of the story here, right? The police were those guys that, according to their job, were the ones that here to protect you, but they did far from it, right? The police were in the pocket, right? Including the chief of police. He was in the pocket of Al Capone, right? Remember, Al Capone know everything. Like, you didn't run in that town unless you had Al Capone's permission. And the chief of police was no different. And he even tells, right after Oscar gets murdered, right, and he goes and he corners Jim and says, "Listen, why don't you go out of town, man? Go out of town, or if I get the order, I'm gonna have to take you out," right? So again, the tension that's creating for the viewer is just brilliant. Great job, obviously, by David Mamet with the writing, Brian De Palma with the directing, and obviously the entire cast and crew that was in charge of the wardrobe, right, and the cinematography. Just excellent filmmaking. Again, it starts with a great story, right, and it's brought to life with a great cast and crew. And that's the Untouchables, man. Wow, we're just under 3 hours long. If you guys have made it this far, I appreciate it. I'm not gonna kind of be too much more long-winded now. I'm just gonna go put this banner out. If you like this video and you like this movie, if you like anything about what you heard from myself or from my associates here, right? My inner circle, hit me up with a like and subscribe, right? Do that, right? It helps me out with the YouTube algorithm, right? You guys know when we hit 100 subscribers, I'm going to give away this Knox custom, right? It's got some moth bites. It's 7 1/4. It's a Knox custom built for Canada, right? From a Canadian manufacturer. What's the name? Stern something. Anyway, I remembered. I looked it up. I found out who it was. I can't remember the name. It starts with an S. You guys might know who it was. But I'm going to give this hat away, right? Once I hit 100 subscribers, I'm going to give away this hat. And maybe you don't have a hat, right? Maybe you're a new viewer, you're new to hats, and maybe this will fit your head, right? This could be a good first hat for you, right? Could be a good gateway hat that gets you really into the hobby and into felt, right? It could be a good knock around hat, right? It's already got the moth bites. Maybe this is a hat that you wear in bad weather. Or another thing is, if you're already into hats like I am, and maybe you want to start getting into restoring hats, right? This could be a good hat to restore. Maybe you could do like my man Ian says, and just take some sandpaper and sandpaper out some of those little moth bites, right? As far as I know, this is not, like I said, I've shown this hat almost every time, right? You guys seen this already before. I'm just plugging this in to kind of see you guys and let you guys see the hat. But if you're new, I'm going to give this away. I'm going to reach 100 subscribers. Then I'm going to do a video on this hat. And then I will go and, depending on who responds to the video, I will give this hat away to them. Only thing I'll ask is maybe if you cover shipping, right? Especially for my international viewers, right? Like, shipping can get really expensive internationally. I don't want to promise something and pull the wool out, pull the rug out from you. So I will be giving this away. And so yeah, like and subscribe and do me a favor and support the channel. Otherwise, I'm okay, right? You guys know where this is going, right? You guys know this is okay, right? I'm gonna send you a message right now from Al Capone himself, right? Al Capone's no longer here, but he told me to send the message. Right? That's why I'm wearing my black Hamburg, right? So you guys know I mean business. You do me one favor, right? One favor. Stay hatting, my friend. Have a great day. Ciao, everybody.